start the meeting this morning and move to the agenda. First thing on the agenda is I'd like to go over the minutes of March 19th, 2014. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Recommendations for April minutes? Oh, the April minutes?
Yeah. If that's the minutes.
Oh, okay, the April 2014 minutes?
Yeah, I looked on the
Anybody else have a comment?
I thought maybe a little bit more could have been said about Emerson and stuff, but what he did about the stormwater management program, deciding that. I got no problem. Make a motion where it's up.
All right, and second?
Second.
Second, all right, all those approve? Opposed? Okay, abstained, abstentions? All right, John, is there any correspondence?
No correspondence.
All right. For the public portion, I'd like to note that any comments on projects before the CEQ today, the public will be allowed to enter their comments at that time. Unless there's some general comments from the public about CEQ and its operation. All right. Next thing on the agenda is the Historic Trust docket with the director's report.
Morning. I don't have anything new to report on the housing or the contracts. I'd like to take my time today to give an introduction to this site. Also, Nick Gibbons is going to explain the master plan that's underway here. And we have people from Ducks Unlimited that occupy this building and have a contract with Suffolk County Parks to have programs here at the site. I just thought I'd give a little background on the historic trust aspect. This property, and actually all the Smithers, what we commonly call the Smithers property, which is a piece of Hubbard County Park, is dedicated to the Suffolk County Historic Trust. Okay, and that was passed in 2008. And we also have a piece around Black Duck Lodge that was dedicated earlier. And so we have two historic districts, in a sense, within Hubbard County Park. The master plan is going to be taking a close look at all the properties here to see if we should be dedicating any additional lands within Hubbard County Park. There's
Black Duck property hook up to this property?
In a way, it's just a hiking trail now. Part of the master plan is to see if we want any more than that, but always the two are connected with a hiking trail.
Are they contiguous, I think?
Yes. Yeah, the park is one. Point that out. Do you want to maybe point out on the...
We're here. This is basically the Smithers piece. Property line being somewhere over here, and the Black Duck Lodge property that's the lodge itself, which you have to access off of Red Creek Road. You come in there this way. So the trails themselves come back through here, across the dike and so forth.
Okay,
So
now we visited Black Duck. Right?
we haven't had a meeting there
No,
because
but
it's not
many years ago, I think.
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, we all
Okay.
So it is a little contiguous parcel, but you have the waterways that kind of, split it up. But it is all pedestrian trails throughout the park, and that's what we're looking to formalize more after the master plan to give us direction on that. The roadway that connects the Black Duck Lodge area to Smithers is actually an old colonial road. There was a grist mill on this waterway here, down here, that created this water pond. So, and those were also used, I'll let Nick explain further, as part of the hunting lodge use. So there's some man-made aspects to this parkland, so that's why we did dedicate it under the Historic Trust. And of course, the number one importance for the whole parcel, and Nick will explain, is the significance of the environment and the plant life here. At that point, I'll turn it over to Nick to explain that.
Also the district.
I'll give you a brief overview of the parcel. And we've been reporting to you guys over the past few months about the status of our master plan effort here, which was funded by a grant through Assemblyman Engelbright's office. The current status of that is we've just completed the RFP. We reviewed all the proposals. Although Parks didn't have a formal role in the scoring of the proposals, that's a function of DPW, at least in this effort. Rich and I had direct input with those people who were doing the evaluation so that they can better understand what Rich's priorities and mine were, and Parks as a whole. And it's fair to say our assessment of the proposals figured significantly in theirs. So I think our concerns were very adequately addressed. We got 4 proposals, I think.
Yes.
We had a mandatory walkthrough out here, of which 7 to 9 firms came, and of those 4 firms submitted proposals. So the current status of that is DPW is still making their final recommendation to move forward with a contract. I would think that this would be, an 18-month contract or so, once we actually are in contract with the consultant. And once we have chosen the firm, I think maybe the Historic Trust will bring them back into the fold, and we could have a dialogue with them and get, just to, so that they have their bearings and a little bit of direction from us.
Nick, are these local firms or outstate or what?
Without getting too far into detail, I think all 4 firms were local. And of course, they bring in subs for a lot of these, and they can be from anywhere. And some of these firms are kind of an assemblage of firms, so they pool their resources from all over the country. But all 4 principals, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, they were all local firms. Yeah.
I think that's sometimes important. Dealing with some of the consultants over the years, and for larger projects, I'm okay with out of state, but for smaller things, and where there's local sensitivity, I'm starting to develop a bias towards local firms, so that they don't have a learning curve.
Well, there's going to be a lot of time spent on site too, so the availability of whomever it is going to be important. We're going to want somebody to regularly be available for on-site work as well. So the scope of work, as it were, for that RFP is really, although they'll recognize the fact, and everybody should, that the county has significant holdings to its credit on the south side of 24. This is, State Route 24 here. Everything basically you see green to the south is owned by Suffolk County, as well as down here in the southeast corner as you start to head towards Shinnecock Canal, Hampton Bays area, that's Red Creek Road. Everything to the south there is also county property as well, and all that green space. So if you notice, there's 4 creeks here, Goose Creek, Birch Creek, Mill Creek, and Hubbard Creek. As Craig pointed out, we're right here on the Smithers Camp property here. Rich can talk a little bit about, there's even history between the 2 camps, the Black Duck Camp and the Smithers Camp. This is the former Browns property. It's another property used for hunting as well. This is an assemblage of properties that the county acquired over a couple of decades. But the greater whole of it is significant by anybody's standards, and certainly by Suffolk County's. The creeks themselves, they all extend back to headwaters up on the south side of 24, and in the case of Hubbard, on the south side of Red Creek Road as well. But if you notice, it's all in public ownership. So it's a very unique environmental setting where you have this whole continuum from an upwelling of groundwater all the way out to the estuary is almost entirely publicly owned and protected. You don't see that very often, and certainly not on Long Island, but even on the East Coast in such a suburban area as this. So this is, I can't overstate the ecological and environmental significance of this property, certainly within our holdings. Arguably the most significant piece we have when you consider everything here. These properties extend all the way down to the Sunrise Highway too, to the south. So Sears Bellows, Maple Swamp, Owl Pond, all those properties are down in this area, and then all the headwaters and the creeks themselves, you can see in the case here of Mill Creek, comes out. We mentioned the impoundments. what we suspect is the Colonial Road that would come from Riverhead to Hampton Bays, ran right through this property. The Palmanock Path comes right through this property. There's a lot going on here in terms of the setting and the environmental setting, the historical setting, and we're not doing a very good job of conveying that story to the residents of Suffolk County. But we're conflicted because it's the situation right now, as you guys now know, for some of you who are coming here for the first time, you look for the plywood box painted white out on the main road, and then you drive down 3/4 of a mile, and here it is. That's not probably good enough considering the significance of the property, the many millions of dollars spent here to acquire the properties over the years. The public isn't afforded the opportunity really in a welcoming way to come here, walk the property, understand it better, and learn to appreciate it. As we continue to have these meetings, and we have been, it's becoming more and more known, and we want to do that in a responsible way, a way where we can manage the use. It's not as if that this property can be repurposed for something else in the future. I wouldn't say there's any threat of that for a number of reasons. The property is entirely within the core preservation area of the Central Pine Barrens, as designated by New York State. By virtue of the fact of the way it was acquired by the county, a lot of these properties come with their own rules and restrictions, which you are all familiar with. However, some of these parcels do date back to the earlier parts of the department, which means that they are less restrictive. They're for park purposes, which is a far broader spectrum of uses than today's acquisition programs allow. Rich mentioned that we have the 2 historic districts. We're looking likely to expand that. I think it's fair to say, if for no other reason than the prehistoric significance of the property that we suspect, part of the master planning effort will be a dusting off of Mr. Johanneman's report. We want to know more about that environmental, archaeological significance of the property. And we suspect, because of the environmental setting here, that there's a lot of that history, both prehistoric and historic. Let's see, we have the historic Pine Barrens, the New York State DEC, of course, both the freshwater wetland and tidal wetland programs and their associated adjacent areas eat up a significant portion of this acreage. That's not to preclude development, however, it'd be very hard thresholds to meet with New York State if we wanted to. I'm not suggesting we do. The master plan is going to kind of tie all that together, recognize all these restrictions, and also talk with the department to figure out better how we could use these buildings. We have a long-standing relationship here with Ducks Unlimited, and we're in cabin 5 here. They also have jurisdiction over the 2 woodsheds outside as well, where they have a kind of living history exhibit, where they have a wood shop where they use traditional methods for building decoys and silhouettes. They also have a collection of historic shooting boxes and boats, with an eye someday towards having a real collection and maybe a museum space out here.
Nick, is this an archaeologically sensitive zone?
Yes.
Especially along the shoreline is where I would expect.
Well, it was acknowledged by Johanneman's report, but I think in the time since he did that report, we've added properties, and we want a closer look at where those significance areas are.
So there's no real study yet at this point in time of where everything is?
Well, no, not where everything is, and we won't have that after the master plan either. But that leads me to one of the concepts that I had brought forward for the consultant to consider was, I think that this is an ideal location for almost establishment of a research forest, as other universities may have. So if we enter into a relationship with a local university, we can begin to build on the institutional knowledge of this property and have a lot of academia out here advancing their knowledge of the prehistoric use of Suffolk County, more of the historical use, a lot of the ecological monitoring that could take years in order for a meaningful understanding of some of what's going on out here, some of the natural processes. So I think by establishing such a relationship there, we could really begin to add to the overall understanding of the property. And there's plenty of potential here with these buildings to do something like that.
You're talking occupancy overnight?
Perhaps, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why not, why we wouldn't enter into a relationship with some organization such as that to do.
Are the rest of the cabins, by the way, usable that way?
Well, no, we currently use 2 for residences for the summer. Then we're, in addition to this cabin 5, this is far and away in the best shape, and that's a product of our relationship with Ducks Unlimited. And then the clubhouse, the main clubhouse here is occupied by summer seasonals that actually work for me on the beach. This is our Plover program housing and has been for about 15 years. And then we have, if the master plan may acknowledge someday that there be better use or a use at all other than the single tenancy space we have at Black Duck, that's going to consider that as well. We're going to have some acknowledgement and baseline information on the structures, but this master plan is more than, it's not the traditional master plan in that sense. It's more about the intangibles that this is going to seek to acknowledge and protect, I guess.
Yeah, Nick, I wondered if you had by any chance looked at what the American Institute of Architects local Peconic chapter did on it, because we had received a national grant from the AIA, and we did a very large study over the course of a year and a half in 2006-07. And there was quite a bit, things that you're talking about now, there was quite a bit that we had talked about then, and I think you were at some of the events that we had at Stony Brook. And I wondered if any of those things, such as this, we talked about doing some sort of specialized study area for this particular location, utilizing the cabins for dignitaries or whoever, who need to come here and study all the things that are going on. Has that been some element of input for your projection of the master plan?
Well, I think at the time that was going on, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when SUNY was beginning to have some kind of role over at Southampton, or soon thereafter?
Yes, but that's just because they just gave us their facilities.
Mm-hmm.
We received a lot of grants to do the study, and as I said, it was about a year and a half long study. And then we had programs that we opened it up to the general public as
Right.
well as to professionals to come in and see what we're doing and participate in what we were doing. And so there was a booklet that was done as a result of that, and it covered, because there are some artifacts, buildings and stuff that are kind of scattered about, as I'm sure you well know, as well as all the sensitivities of the natural elements that are here. So.
Source of information.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
we have, that's one of several documents that I think we're going to provide to whomever it is that we're going to start working with shortly.
Oh, that's great.
As
Okay.
baseline information for them to work.
Right, it's a good
Mhm.
baseline information, exactly. All right,
Yeah.
great. We'll be very happy. I'm going to report back to Suffolk now.
This is where it came in.
Yeah, this is where, yes, exactly, that's where I came in. Because I worked very closely with Richard, because he really brought me in here, introducing the property to us. And it was really a very special moment in time, as well as, offers so many great possibilities.
And I think that we had there was a resolution in the past 12 to 18 months by Legislator Horsley to look at occupancy of some of these buildings.
Yeah.
To try and, foster some of these
Right.
Partnerships.
Right.
One of which was Black Duck. Didn't
Yes.
really go anywhere. However, I think that the concept is what we're looking for. We want to get some kind of usage in here because we don't want the buildings to continue to deteriorate. And I think those partnerships would be helpful, as this place attests to.
Yeah, well, as the professional aspect of AIA, and it was recognized on a national level, so I'm just kind of bringing that out on the table, that this particular property is recognized on a national level, and I think it has a lot of value for, to offer people, so the possibilities are extensive.
Yeah.
Thanks for introducing me, at least to the extent of this. I was not familiar with its condition. In New Jersey, there's a place called Mullica River, which is often used in studies as the reference, or the pristine conditions, if you will. A lot of studies, degradation here and restoration there, and Mullica River is the one that they compare to, because it's really important to compare what are we trying to get to. It seems like you should be able to, or we should be able to, seek some grants to sort of nominate ourselves or maintain the ability to serve as one of those reference sites, because, as you say, from a demographic pressure and a development pressure, this is a remarkable reference site. I did some of the TMDLs, and the TMDL says, well, there's too much in there, you better start reducing. And the answer is, shut up. This is the way it is, folks. This is baseline. And so I just offer that as a source of a funding basis. And I'm not quite sure whether it's the Wildlife Federation Fund or whether it should be something through Fish and Wildlife or EPA, but I bet you could.
But do they require a master plan first before they start?
Not necessarily, because this isn't really fully adopted into some program. It's more like the basis by which you could recruit funds because it could serve as a master plan. I'm sure could help show how it'll stay that way, but it already is good enough to serve a function that I think hasn't been tapped as much as it could.
The word pristine just bothers me personally, just because don't forget that you're right in terms of water quality and the significance of the protected lands around these waterways. There's no comparable on Long Island for sure. But if you look at, and you'll notice, and everybody here recognizes what that is, these were all ditched wetlands.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history here, both historical and not so historical. There's been a lot of alterations to this property. It was probably completely denuded at one time.
Yeah, I was going to say the tree line does not look natural.
But I'll tell you that Hubbard Creek, that far eastern one, that happens to be recognized by New York State as a reference wetland in terms of their ecological inventory and descriptions of New York State.
So you're already in.
And Hubbard Creek is listed as an estuarine creek of reference. So if you want to find this habitat, and they give an example. The example they give in that book is this place. So yes, you're right in that sense that at least on a statewide scale, it's been recognized. And then don't forget all these creeks lead out into an embayment, which is the Peconic Estuary, which is recognized by the EPA and the federal government as an estuary of national significance. I just want to introduce Craig Kessler again from Ducks Unlimited. I'd like him to speak a little bit to the historic sportsman's use here and kind of tie that in. You guys have heard the story before about how a lot of these places wouldn't have existed if not for the fact that they were tied up by private hunting camps, and then both New York State, Suffolk County, and maybe places, local townships have purchased or otherwise acquired these properties intact. And that's the story here as well. So, Craig?
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to even have this relationship with Suffolk County Parks. It's probably been in existence now for some, I'm going to say 15 years. I was involved in the foundation of this concept. I've since retired from Ducks Unlimited in June of 2010. I'm staying involved with these programs as a volunteer, and in a moment I'll introduce you to my successor, Wayne Roberts. But you've heard a lot about the history already, and I won't go back into that too much. I would like to speak a little bit about our stewardship agreement that we have here with the park and what it means to us and what it means to the parks and to the residents of Suffolk County. As was stated already, without going into too much detail, both of these properties, Smithers property and the Black Duck Lodge property, were historic hunting camps of rather wealthy individuals that saw fit to protect Long Island's landscape, and as such, we all benefit from that today. And Nick also pointed out that many other examples around Long Island are pretty pivotal to this concept as well. I had the good fortune of working at the Southside Sportsman's Club, now the Connecticut River State Park Preserve, and actually guided for the man that was the last owner of this place. So my personal connection to this concept is pretty deeply rooted. And the last owner of this place was R. Brinkley Smithers, who was a wealthy resident of Mill Neck, New York. Came into his good fortune by way of the Itty Bitty Machine Company, IBM. At that time, gave $20 million to the Smithers Institute back in the 60s, so you can imagine what kind of wealth we're talking about back then.
Wait, is this the drug rehab place?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And At any rate,
Jim was telling me all
Do you
about
want directions?
I went to visit you there a lot.
it. Hey, they need lawyers.
At any rate, again, due to some early recognition of what this property stood for, and at that time some increasing involvement on Long Island by the Ducks Unlimited organization, we were able to put our heads together with Bill Sickles and Nick and some of the early commissioners, Peter Scully and Michael Frank before that, and so forth, and recognize what this property stood for. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Ducks Unlimited, Ducks Unlimited is a national private conservation organization that is dedicated to the preservation, protection, and restoration of wetlands across the entire North American continent. We have almost 600,000 members, raise lots of money every year, and we were looking for a way to bring the identity of Ducks Unlimited back into Long Island, and we saw this as a perfect match because the objectives that we saw fit for this stewardship agreement really met the objectives of our organization as well as the objectives of the programs that Nick just spoke about. So the three prongs of the stewardship agreement that we penned were that we would be involved in the protection and restoration of the wetland resources on the property, which DU could bring to bear scientific and technical knowledge on how to do that, as well as financial resources and expertise in helping to manage that. The second being the fact that this was a historic shooting property that the county was interested in perpetuating as such. Obviously, it was consistent with our base of membership, which is waterfowlers and sportsmen, and consequently, we're interested in recognizing and preserving and doing what we can to perpetuate the historical significance of waterfowling as it was practiced on Long Island. And the third being that we need to reach out to the next generation through educational programs. So our Green Wing program, or our youth program, was a perfect fit to find a site where we might deliver such programs, not only to our membership, but reach out to all residents of Suffolk County. And so the facility that you see here, which was essentially the dining hall facility for the waterfowl club that existed here, lends itself very well to a small environmental center in the sense that we have cooking kitchen facilities, restroom, as well as a grand meeting room here, which we use in many ways. So we've been able to deliver quite a number of programs over the years. Typically, they're centered in the fall as we approach the sporting season, but we work closely with New York State DEC to deliver, for example, hunter education programs in all of its various forms, such that we're perpetuating the sporting life in a responsible fashion with our youth. We go beyond that and reach out and do things like waterfowl identification. This year in March, we were doing a little of the science by banding black ducks here on the property, which banding, as you know, is methodology that's used to basically study migratory waterfowl and other migratory birds. So a little true science there being delivered on the property. And we are very interested in perpetuating this agreement as we move forward, because we believe that we can deliver not only these educational programs, but as you move into the historical aspects of trying to, perpetuate and interpret the hunting history that existed here, we think we're pretty well equipped to help you with that as well. And as Nick alluded to, we've got some things already stashed away. There's 6 historic duck boats that I've managed to get as donations, which are in one of the garages down there, and we have some old decoys and artifacts, photographs, and so forth. So these are some circles that I had the good fortune of traveling in, over the years, and knock wood, I'm still doing so. So be happy to entertain any questions you might have about that. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce Wayne Roberts. He'll tell you about one event we're having in just a month from now, and Wayne is my successor and basically is responsible for the DU identity here on Long Island as we move forward, and I'll stay involved in this particular site. Wayne Roberts.
Good morning. I just wanted to take the opportunity to meet everybody and say hello. Like Craig said, I took over for Craig and he retired. I reside in Connecticut. I cover both Connecticut and Long Island for the organization, so I'm bouncing back and forth all the time. And I got to acknowledge Craig as a resource here, and a great partner on the island. He's, been here all his life. He knows the area, knows the history, knows the folks, and having him involved and continue to be involved is just super special and important for us, and we appreciate that. I want to take up a lot of your time this morning, but I did bring some materials in the building that you can look at later, take with you and things. There's brochures on the table. There's a little bit of some of the conservation reports for New York State over the last year or two. There's a poster right here alongside the wall. There's little yellow dots on that map. Those are all the projects we've done across New York State. One quick little point of note is that last year in the state of New York we raised about $2 million, but we spent over $3 million on habitat projects across the state. So New York State's definitely a very big beneficiary of what we do as far as habitat work and restoration. Here, sure, everybody's got kids or grandkids, you know, they spend much too much time using these muscles and not anything else. We have our family day here, June the 28th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Have interactive stations throughout the property for families and kids to come out and enjoy and to experience some of the outdoor activities. Even especially some folks who don't come from outdoor families, for them to get a chance to come out and get an experience of a property like this, get outside, see nature, and try casting a fly rod, try tying a fly, to paint a decoy, to do just some of the other activities. Well, I guess we're going to have the birds of prey here again and things like that. Just a lot of very wonderful things for families and kids to do, to come out and enjoy part of the day. And it is free of charge. People just come and enjoy the day. So if you have families or know folks, there's flyers and brochures about that day on the table as well. We'd like to encourage as many families and as many children especially to come for that day as possible. That's really one of our key goals as our partnership with you folks on this property is how do we get this next generation of folks to go outside and not just stay inside all the time. I've got a 17-year-old son. I struggle with him all the time. He just, that phone and that computer are just, constant. So we need to have this kind of an outlet and this kind of resource for the next generation. So we have folks on boards like this in the future that want to perpetuate and understand and want to preserve the outdoors and understand the importance of it. So we really appreciate everything you folks do. We really love working with you. I don't want to take up any more of your time this morning, but there's some materials on the table there for you. There's a photo album over here as well if you look through some of the things that the kids have done. How are you?
I did have one question.
Sure.
Because this is such an amazing program that you guys have been doing for decades. Is there one thing that you would say is the primary focus for you going forward that you would like to see happen for this site?
Personally, for me right now, my primary focus is to get people here for that family day, to get families to participate. It's amazing to us that we have a free activity like that and we get very few people actually show up that day. So getting the word out, getting people to bring their families, bring children, grandchildren, neighbor kids, even just come yourself if you've never done some of these activities. There's nothing wrong with an adult coming and saying, hey, teach me to cast a fly rod. I've never done it. We'd love to have people come and experience that and just get them engaged with wildlife and the outdoors. I think as we move forward and as we go through with the master plan and things like that, there's going to be all kinds of different things that we can participate on here as well. Greg?
Yeah, I'd like to address that if I could.
Yeah.
I think the programs that we have are readily expandable in terms of number of contact days, new groups. We're doing a lot with Boy Scouts now. I think that's something that can perpetuate itself fairly easily. But to answer your question, I think the thing that I'd like to see as a next phase would be this historical, interpretive hunter aspect museum of it. I've got all this stuff, but I'm not going to last forever either.
Right.
You can either give it away, throw it away, sell it, or put it to the use that I intended, which was to have at some point one of these buildings set aside as an interpretive center for the historic aspects of waterfowling on Long Island. For those of you that don't know, Long Island was a tremendous place. And I'll invite you all to the March Decoy Show. I happen to be in charge of the exhibit for that. We're doing a thing called When Broadbill Was King on the Great South Bay. Footnote. It has nothing to do with this place, but it's just another effort that I'm putting together to show how significant waterfowling was on Long Island before the degradation of all 3 days, and all the land resources that were associated with it. So, long story short, if we move in that historical
So the educational aspect is one of the biggest things for the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's a lot that can be done with that.
Well, I think there is. I think it's in everybody's radar, from all the conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
If that were to, be a next step for this place, I think it'd be terrific.
I'd like to thank you very much for this
I just had a quick
presentation.
question. Do you, for your event, do you take out an ad in Friday's Newsday where all the events for the weekend are listed?
We put it just about everywhere where we can,
Oh, yeah.
and I'll be getting that stuff out shortly. We just got the date and everything set. Michael Wright usually does a very nice job of putting articles in the paper for us and things, and we've been now, as we're moving into the technology age, we've been doing very well with everybody on Long Island for whom I have an email address has gotten an email notification about it, and we'll get a subsequent email notification about it. It's on our websites. Long Island Gun and Game News Magazine is now online. He's publishing an article coming up about it. So we're going to try every avenue we possibly can.
Because for our historic properties, you know, anything that involves family and kids, I mean, you get mobbed. You know, the Marine
Yeah, that's
Museum,
why I'm
you know,
asking.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
thousands of people.
So there's something that can be done there that's not being done,
You know,
yeah.
This is a county property, and I'm looking at Mike Pitcher right now. You know, he's press officer for the county legislature. And to the extent this is a county property, is there anything on your end that you can try and help us with to get this kind of an event out?
Well, certainly if you send me any press releases or information you have, I can send it out to my mailing list, which covers everybody in the universe.
Is it on the website too for kind of?
We could certainly put something on the legislature website.
Basically,
There we
you
go,
would say send
that'll
out a
help.
presser.
And Mike, do you have a card with your email address on it?
Yeah.
Because I can just, I'll email,
That's what I'm digging
I'll email
out.
you the flyer that I have right there on the,
Okay.
on the table that has the basic information and stuff on it. And I'm also going to leave some of my cards on the table, so if anybody, you know.
Yeah, I would like to have
Thank
one
you.
of these.
And Mike, sorry to put you on the spot, but
That's quite all right.
I'm probably sure
What you
about
do
the whole
with your
big section,
pressers,
but I'll leave what I have on the table.
No,
so
that's,
folks
I
have-
appreciate
But
that.
I'll touch base with you on that. And,
Very good.
Yeah, because like the rest of this week after I have an event this evening, I'm going to be working on more.
and when you do it, put a sign out.
Yeah, right. I'm probably the dumbest one in the room here. I arrived late, and I'm sorry for that. But I mean, you could drive past this place a million times and not know
Yeah,
it.
usually we have failure. We put the big DU banner out there, and there's little yellow placard signs that are leading up with kind of like little duck heads leading you.
But even for our own parks department, I mean, Sears Bello has this huge sign, and this says
Have a sign.
what? The big
Yeah.
duck has a sign, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is
So I thought the access was made
That
for
part
the
would
big
be,
duck.
that'd be Nick's venue.
Yes.
I like it that way.
Well, yeah.
If we're going to preserve it, if we're going to preserve this, we can invite
I'd like
everybody.
to bring the meeting back and move on the agenda, please.
Yes.
And I'm gonna leave my cards on the table.
Thank you. We just started late. So, all right, again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
On the project,
Nick, you're now in charge of coffee instead of me.
All right, sounds good.
on the
Thanks.
project review, the first thing on the agenda, recommended unlisted action, proposed inclusion of parcels of land into the certified agricultural district for 2014. Before we start that, I'd really like to ask John to give the CEQ an overview of why this is here and what CEQ's jurisdiction is in this particular matter. Okay?
Yep. Thank you. So just so you know what the CEQ's role is in this, a number of parcels were reviewed by the Suffolk County Farmland and Agricultural Board. And so they reviewed those parcels and recommended those certain parcels to be included in the agricultural district to the Suffolk County Legislature. And then the Suffolk County Legislature reviews those parcels, and if they agree, recommend them to New York State to be added to existing agricultural districts. Because the Suffolk County Legislature is making that recommendation, a Suffolk County action needs to be reviewed under secret. So that action in EAF was completed, and the CEQ's role is to review the action of adding these parcels to an existing agricultural district. And just a quick purpose of the agricultural district, as it's shown online, is to encourage the continued use of farming and agricultural production on a parcel. So just kind of an overview of CEQ's role is what is the environmental issues of adding these parcels to an ag district. Not necessarily, not whether they should be in it. That kind of is not the CEQ's role. The CEQ's role is what is the environmental impact of expanding an ag district with the
We're not
parcel.
making a policy decision, in other words,
Right.
a straight secret review.
Right.
Yeah.
If I may,
Straightforward.
I don't understand whether the CEQ is allowed to opine about the scenario which will apparently allow for agriculture going forward in these parcels. Can we speak to that, or are we just supposed to be describing the effect of the land use going from whatever it is now to whatever it's going to be, but it now has a designation of a district?
One thing, an overview of that particular, from what I understand, is the designation into the agricultural district simply is an economic incentive for those people to continue agricultural use on those parcels. It's not designed to change or intensity use of the parcel or anything else. It's an existing parcel that has agricultural use that meets certain objectives of the state. Certain products are produced or certain things like that, and that once they're designated in the agricultural district, they have certain tax incentives.
But it's also establishing the right to farm, though. That's,
Well, they already have the right to farm.
a continued, but it boosts that aspect.
And, no, anybody has a continued right to farm. One of the problems with farming and agriculture on Long Island in the past has been when the owners of property pass on, all right? And that goes into estate planning. A lot of the people inheriting those properties couldn't continue the agriculture. They had to sell off large parcels of those properties to get the taxes to pay the federal government the estate tax. So they created these agricultural districts to some extent to try to offset some of that.
So the rest of my question was about this verb called farming or agriculture. We clearly have a lot of evidence that shows it is harmful to the environment. So what I'd like to know is, can the CEQ do anything to improve the definition of agriculture such that it would be practiced at rates that are sustainable? Because agricultural per se can be wonderfully easy and have no impact, or it can be extremely harmful and have a lot of impact. How can we...
I think one positive, I think, of the agricultural districts program is there's a part of that program that allows municipalities or others to say, is this farming and is it kind of being done in a good agricultural practice way?
So do we have any ability to affect
the agricultural district? You can have
That's
projects
away from us.
reviewed to see if it's agricultural nature, if it's the right, what's the...
It's simply a rate.
I think the word is
production is
the agricultural practice sound? So there is some part in the district about it.
But that's not part of what we're doing today at all.
We're more, it's an administrative decision, essentially, as opposed to if you will, a zoning or a quality decision. Should this be a farm? We're not looking into the policies of what is going on. Whether this is throwing off pollutants or pesticides or whatever.
We're reviewing 7, 8, and 10, which state there is no or only a small impact on public water, public wastewater, and water bodies and groundwater. We're reacting to these statements.
That's our charge under secret, but at the same time, we're also, again, faced with the administrative aspect. This is coming out of the farmland committees, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but one other thing too, I think you have to realize that SECRA exempts agricultural operations. It's right in the law. It's written right into SECRA.
Yeah, we've heard different than that also. We've heard that the county and cooperative extension is working closely with programs to work towards reductions because they know that. So exemption is kind of old thinking and not necessarily what others have embraced as.
But the right to farm is enshrined in the law.
TMDL goes all the way upstream to the divide.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Agricultural practices are inside the reach of those watershed controls.
SECRA actually says that agricultural operations are exempt for type 2 action under the law.
Okay, so from that point of view, the law instructs us that we are immune to anything about this kind of activity other than that it's administratively changing to a different tax status. If that's the extent of our discussion, then I think we're pretty close.
We can take notice of it, but the actual motion that we make is a recommendation to the legislature. should this be included in this program or not? That's the core question.
I mean, your recommendation to the legislature.
Our recommendation is the
What are
secret
the implications
ramifications.
of secret and what
Not
is
whether it should
defined
be.
in
Yeah,
Yeah,
pursuant
I'm
to
not
the
talking about in terms of policy.
secret? What are the implications in terms of secret and how does it, administer on the law? That's your recommendation. Not whether or not it should be placed in an ag district or whether it meets the, the rules of the law for placement in that district or anything else. It's simply that saying, what are the secret implications or the environmental implications if these properties, which are already agricultural, designated within the district and receive tax treatment?
And the people who have done those nominations and reviews have already determined the viability and such, so
That's another board.
we don't go there
Right.
either. Yeah, thank you.
To Tom's very important point, if we can make some sort of recommendation about there be some sort of further review as to the quality of the type of ag business they're doing, is there anything we can say about that?
That's
We can't say anything about
The
it.
Farmland Protection Board,
We can't say, okay.
they reviewed that.
No, I know they reviewed that, but I'm saying when we,
No, they didn't. They didn't.
well, I shouldn't say no.
Inherently, they don't have to review the rate of production.
They do have to look at the amount of money that's produced by the property,
But that's,
and that it's viable agriculture being done.
I
So
think,
they're cranking it out from a commerce point of view, which is what they do review, but they don't review whether it's a sustainable practice.
I think your
And that's okay.
concerns, Tom, are good concerns.
But we don't do it on a.
They were concerns when the secret was originally passed, because the
I'm just
agricultural
confirming that
lobby
it's not invalid.
put that in the
we're
secret
not-
law.
We're not
But-
implicitly approving that, we're just saying administratively they decided 7 of the 9, and we're
Right.
saying keep moving on.
But the impact of agriculture on other operations is really a policy issue and a broad issue for the state and the island to tackle and find out how do you reduce impacts on the environment from those types of things.
And this
And they're
decision-
already trying to do that.
But this decision has no bearing on
This
that, or the
decision has no
support
bearing
or
on that.
count.
No.
Thanks.
All right, can we give an overview, Loretta? You prepared
Yes.
the EAF?
good point.
As was mentioned by John, the Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board met a month or so ago and reviewed 9 parcels through 7 applications for consideration for inclusion or into an agricultural district. And they included 1 property in the town of East Hampton, 2 in the town of Huntington, 1 in the town of Islip Village of Islandia, 1 in the town of Riverhead, 4 in the town of Riverhead, and 1 in the town of Southampton. As I said, the board reviewed 7 applications totaling 9 parcels of land under New York State Agriculture and Markets Law, Section 303B. The board itself is created by the legislation of the Ag and Markets Law under 303A. The 7 parcels of the 9 were determined by the board to be viable agricultural lands that would serve the public interest by assisting in maintaining a viable agricultural industry within the district. The board itself for Suffolk County is directed to create guidelines that they use to indicate whether the properties that come before them are included in, are recommended to be included in the ag district or not. And I'll just go through the guidelines that they use just for your edification. The first one is, does the proposed property involve an active commercial agricultural production operation, a commercial horse boarding operation, and/or a commercial equine operation? Are there greater than 7 acres and greater than $10,000 in annual gross sales or if less than 7 acres, and greater than $50,000 in annual gross sales for a commercial agricultural operation. Are there greater than 7 acres and greater than $10,000 in annual gross sales and at least 10 horses boarded or stabled for a commercial horse boarding operation or an equine operation? And is greater than 50% of the farmland in agricultural production and or used in support of a commercial horse boarding operation and or a commercial equine operation? So those are the basic guidelines that they use to make a recommendation for these properties to be included into an existing agricultural district. So before you today, we have, and I can go into the details of each of the applications if you'd like. The first application is Darrell Glennon, and this is a property in the town of East Hampton. The use is, and the operation is food and horticulture, crops and livestock. Property is 1.5 acres north of Kobe Court and east of Spring Close Highway in the hamlet of East Hampton. The application states that the property has been in active agricultural production for more than 5 years, and the farm operation generates average annual gross sales greater than $50,000. And more than 50% of the property is used for agricultural production. And the board recommended inclusion into agricultural district.
Loretta?
Yes.
Before you continue, I'd like to
Sure.
point out that as Loretta goes over these various parcels, if anybody is here that wants to make a public comment regarding any particular designation, please do so at that time.
The next,
Yeah.
Can we ask a question?
Yeah.
Question, is it okay to ask per parcel questions, or do you want to hold the questions to the end?
we can do it per parcel.
Okay. All right, well, I'm looking at the East Hampton one, 0300. I note that on the aerial, there's an ag reserve to the left, bottom. Is this particular property that we're talking about related to that other ag reserve?
No,
Or
it's
is this
not.
an isolated
No.
property?
No,
No, it's not.
it's a separate lot. This is the only lot that they're proposing, this small, that property outlined in red.
Well, I know farmland's precious out there.
Yes.
And that
They'll farm
property is
anything they
used
can.
for what?
Horticulture and food crops, and livestock, actually. They also have a few livestock on the eastern portion of the property.
Right, which is further to the west. I do know the property, it's right around the corner from my house.
It's also in an agricultural preserve property.
It's in that area, yes, I know. And the property to the south of it is not really abandoned, but it is kind of abandoned and everything is becoming deteriorated. There's all kind of litigation going on about that one. I don't understand, it meets the requirements?
Yes, it meets the
But
requirement.
by the skin of its teeth?
Yes.
All right.
It did meet the criteria that
Okay.
they set up, and it's over 50,000 gross sales value. And so, being that it's less than 7 acres,
Can I ask how that was qualified?
they have to fill out an application and sign affidavit that the information is true.
Did they send it to BP for a claim too?
All right, any other questions? All right, move on to the next.
Doesn't that kind of,
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, we're not,
But it's not for us.
question
We
the ag-
can't say. We don't have the
Yeah,
ability
exactly.
to.
Yeah.
committee and
okay.
We shouldn't
You're
second guess
right,
that.
you're
committee.
right, you're
If,
right.
if this is a secret type of thing, is what are the environmental implications under secret of placing this in an ag district?
Okay, well,
I'm gonna make-
And
if I
there are
can-
none for us to consider.
No, I'm not
We
making a
can't
motion.
why
consider
don't we
anything
just
about
do the
it.
whole getting the brutal then?
I
Why are we
haven't heard
looking at
anything
each
that we
one?
can consider.
Yeah, there's nothing we can consider, let's just do the whole thing.
I will, if I can make one comment, I will say, every bit of ag property that we can designate in East Hampton is important because of the development issues that go on.
Yeah.
So,
Development at a higher than 2-acre density, from the environmental point of view, can have less environmental impact than ag.
Interestingly enough, though, they're
But again, that's not part of what we're trying to.
That's not-
Yeah, and since
not
there's,
here.
let's just do the whole thing. That's nothing.
I think that's,
I don't hear anything that we can
I
weigh in
agree.
on.
Right.
No,
well, I would like to
Let's
just,
go through this.
if members have specific questions relative to specific items, maybe they can be addressed to Loretta and we'll handle it that
Right,
way. And
let's
then
do
at
it
the
that
end we'll
way,
take
yeah.
the vote. Michael? Do you have a question?
on which property? Just this
On
one?
any of them.
On any of them?
Well, do you want me to continue going through them
Yeah.
individually or not?
I don't think that's necessary
No.
in this particular instance, because, you know, you can't, you know, discuss the board, you know, the agricultural board's determination and whether or not it's agriculture, they're ongoing and everything else. We're here to discuss what are the environmental implications of placing these parcels in an ag district, and they're currently considered farm property. There's no proposed changes, you're simply making a designation into an ag district which is for economic incentive. And what are the implications under secret? And secret clearly states that agricultural operations are exempt.
This is almost like a type 2 in its own way. I know it's unlisted and all that. It's almost, to my eye, it's like an administrative decision. Board has fully reviewed this, and again, I'm not making a motion yet or anything like that. We haven't heard from the public or anything. But I don't really have many questions on this at this point in time unless other information comes out. It looks like a board has reviewed it. It meets the criteria of the state regulations, as has been apparently sworn to. I've looked at these properties, some of them I do know. I'm not seeing the issues at this point in time with any of them. The thin little one in Hampton, that's a policy call. If it's productive, it's okay. The rest of them, I just don't see anything at this point in time. But again, I'd like to hear, if there's anything out there.
Do the members have any questions relative to specific parcels within this proposal as set forth? All right, now I have a question. Does anybody here want to address the CEQ for public comment, please? And please state what parcel you want to identify.
Certainly. First, let me identify myself. My name is Vincent Pizzulli. I'm special counsel to the Village of Islandia. I'm a partner with the firm before Shelley Curto with offices at 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard in Uniondale. My client, the mayor of the Village of Islandia, is also with me this morning. And thank you for opening the floor to us. I just need about 5 minutes of your time. I just want to make several comments and observations on one of the parcels that's being considered for inclusion in the Ag District. And I will address the secret question because I agree with the chair. You're here to conduct a secret review, not make a decision on the merits of the inclusion. The parcel that I am speaking to is one that is located in the Village of Islandia. It's identified by tax map number as 0504, Section 4, Block 1, Lot 16. It's colloquially known as the Palomine Equestrian Farm. It's located on Old Nichols Road in the Village of Islandia. It's approximately 7.4 acres in size, and my understanding, although I have not yet seen it, is that the Agricultural and Farm Protection Board has recommended it for inclusion. I'm still trying to get a copy of that
Yes,
decision.
it was recommended, and we're working on the
Thank you. I would just like to give you a little 2 minutes of background and observation on the property itself, and then I'll address the secret argument. The property is about 7.4 acres. It's currently zoned in the Village of Islandia, under the Village's zoning, agricultural district. That's separate and distinct from the state agricultural district that's being considered by the county legislature. The owner of the farm submitted an application to Suffolk County Planning on February 4th, 2014, seeking to be included in the state agricultural district. That application was not accompanied by any kind of an environmental assessment form. It was just a raw application to the board that was stamped received on February 7th. My understanding, and I do have a copy of it, is that the Suffolk County Planning staff reviewed that parcel amongst the others, made a recommendation to the Farmland Protection Board. The Farmland Protection Board has since made a recommendation to the county legislature, all without benefit of an environmental assessment form. An environmental assessment form was ultimately prepared by planning on May 12th, which is 3 months, more than 3 months after the application was submitted, and I'll return to that issue in a moment. The Palomine Equestrian Farm, as evidenced by its submission to Suffolk County Planning for inclusion in the district, is a physical therapy operation using horses. I first want to point out to you that under the village's agricultural district, there are 2 horse-related uses that are unconditionally permitted uses. One is a commercial stable, and the other is a riding academy. Physical therapy, medical use is not a permitted use in the district, and we have since learned from the applicant's own submission and other media that there's quite an extensive physical therapy use of this property at the village, and that planning consultants are currently considering and going to be attempting to address very soon. It's not my argument to this committee, but it will be my argument to the legislature that the inclusion of this property in the district is conferring a benefit upon a property owner that's not currently in compliance with the village zoning. And on that point, I do want to bring to the board's attention that there's not simply an economic incentive benefit by being included in the agricultural district, in the state agricultural district. There are 2 prime benefits. One is tax abatements and subsidies. That benefit is not needed or necessary for this particular property because this Palomine Equestrian Farm has already been granted a full real property tax exemption by the assessor of the town of Islip. So there's no incentive for this property owner to get into the state agricultural district on that basis. The basis that we assume they're seeking, the benefit we assume they're seeking by inclusion in the ag district is to get some protection or additional protections from zoning laws, from local laws and zoning. There is a procedure under the ag markets law that permits an agricultural property owner to appeal to the commissioner of the State Department of Agriculture what, in its view, they may deem to be an unreasonable enforcement of local zoning laws. So those are the 2 prime benefits. The tax abatement benefit is really not applicable here, but there is a zoning issue here, and there could be a zoning issue is what I should say. I shouldn't suppose anything at this point.
But you are.
I'm positing that possibility, yes.
You get it.
It is logical. There is no... Now, in its submission to Suffolk County Planning on February 7th, they included a business pro forma identifying what the property is being used for. And I didn't make copies for the CEQ because we were conducting a secret review, but I will just point out to the board that by its own submission, the property owner is conducting equine-assisted psychotherapy, in-motion therapy, work study, character education, equine-assisted learning. The in-motion therapy includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech-language pathology services. The owner of the property is treating between 300 and 400 patients at this property in Islandia, which is set, by the way, as you well all know, in a suburban setting. This is not a rural area per se. Having said that, I just want to come back to Secret Act, because that's why we are here this morning. As I said initially, this application was submitted in February without an environmental assessment, and it was reviewed and studied for over 2 months, 3 months, without benefit of a secret determination. 617.6 of secret says, as early as possible in an agency's formulation of an action, or as soon as an agency receives an application, it must do the following. Subparagraph 3. Determine whether the action may involve one or more other agencies. That determination, to my knowledge, has not been made. And the Village of Islandia is clearly an interested agency, if not an involved agency. They are also required to make a preliminary classification of an action as type 1 or unlisted, using the information available and comparing it with the thresholds set forth in the statute and the regulations. This application is being presented to you in conjunction with 6 other parcels seeking inclusion in the Ag District under one secret motion, under one secret classification. Collectively, all 7 parcels being recommended to you, when added together, far exceed the 10-acre minimum threshold for a type 1 action. I mean, I'm not saying an environmental impact statement should be required, but what I am saying is that it is a type 1 action, and at a minimum, a full environmental assessment form is required to assess the impact of a type 1 action. You could still reach a negative declaration, but there's a process to reach that.
I understand that, but, you know, a type 1 action deals with the physical alteration of 10 or more acres.
Correct.
Not basically 10 or more acres being reclassified into a district. I think there's a little difference there.
No, the secret regulations just say it's a type 1 action if it's a minimum lot area of 10 acres. You can reach the conclusion that there's no physical alteration and therefore make a negative declaration. However, having said that, there still is a physical alteration component to this because of what I said previously about the zoning aspect of, or benefits of being included in an agricultural district. It basically confers a benefit upon the property that may make it exempt or seek to be exempt from local zoning and therefore could expand its operations without benefit of a full local zoning review. But I'll leave that to the board's edification and determination. As I said previously, the environmental assessment form, which is the Suffolk County short form, which has been presented to you, was prepared on May 12th, more than 3 months after the application was submitted, and after the application was considered by the Agricultural and Farm Protection Board.
If I might clarify, seeker actually reads a project or action that involves the physical alteration of 10 acres.
Correct.
I don't see.
All right, let him continue, sir.
That's what I'm saying.
Is there more?
When more than one agency is involved under seeker, for all type 1 actions and/or coordinated review of unlisted actions, which is how this application is being presented to you.
Which is
A
voluntary.
lead agency must be established prior to a determination of significance.
I might point out that on an unlisted action and coordinated review for unlisted action is voluntary in the agencies. It's not required.
I don't disagree with that, Chairman. But I am pointing out that no consideration was given to the fact that there could be a local impact or effect of including this property in the ag district. And for that reason, it could have been and should have been referred to a coordinated review. So that the village would have had the opportunity to participate in this process, offer its comments without just getting a notice 7 days before the Ag Protection Board meeting in and of itself, which I appeared at and made my comments, but the decision was voted upon and made that evening.
So in other words, you attended the Ag Committee's
I did.
meeting and you presented your comments to them as well.
They gave me 3 minutes to offer my comments to the board. Staff had already made its recommendation. I asked the board if they would hold the meeting open for a week or two so that we could submit formal comments. They said no. They voted on it that night without the benefit of a full examination or review of its impacts upon the village of Islandia. But that's not your purview.
Okay, no, but
Okay.
thank you for
All right.
bringing that to the...
Another secret issue that I want to point out to the CEQ is that New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets does have on its website an environmental assessment form to be used in conjunction with applications for inclusion in the state agricultural district. This is it. I'll leave it with you if you'd like. Of significance in here in this form, and I'll further...
Is that the new one or the old one?
I can't, this is the one that is on the website, whether it's new or old, I can't say.
Okay, because they are in the process right now of updating. So,
I understand that.
And I don't know
We
what
did
you're talking about.
get the updated one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you
We
say?
did get the
Okay.
updated one from Agriculture.
And we have the new New York State form, but Suffolk County is also using its own environmental assessment form, which I assume is based upon the state model that's going to be
Yes.
promulgated. Okay? But one of the questions on the state form that I don't see in the local form is there a public controversy related to this district proposal? That question hasn't been considered or even mentioned in the environmental assessment form for this action, which on the first page, the Suffolk County Short Environmental Assessment Form, question number 1, does the proposed action only involve the legislative adoption of a plan, local law, ordinance, administrative rule, or regulation? The answer yes was checked off, and by checking off yes, the form does not require any continued analysis of any of the applications or proposals. Specifically, it says if the answer is yes, attach a narrative description of the intent of the proposed action, and proceed to part two. Part two is the assessment of the action, and all of the questions relating to the actual use of the land go unaddressed and unanswered in the environmental assessment form. I don't think that's a fair consideration of the potential physical environmental impacts of a horse farm or an agricultural use for that matter. And I think at the very minimum, the applicant should have either provided that information, or the county should have solicited that information from the applicant to prepare and allow for an examination of how this property is being used, what the potential impacts are. We need information and facts.
I have a question on that point of order. The applicant was not proposing on creating a horse farm.
No.
He was not proposing anything, to do any alterations of the property. This application was to review an existing operation as it currently
Correct.
is. All right, so environmental impact, review of an existing operation as is, technically doesn't reach the threshold of secret in particular thing here. I mean, otherwise we could go into the whole, as Tom mentioned, the whole impact to agriculture on the environment, aesthetics and everything else. Larry?
I would like to get some clarification on whether this is considered an agricultural activity and how the county came to that conclusion of, based on what Mr. Pizzulli has said.
Well,
and I was going to make mention of that, Mr. Swanton. Thank you. And if you allow me to, and I'll let the chair answer the question, but one of the reasons why we think it's important that the environmental assessment form, at a minimum, be prepared to identify and describe the existing operation is so that this board, as well as the county legislature, could fully understand the nature of the use of the property, which we don't believe to be a, quote, commercial equine operation. We believe it to be a medical office use with accessory horses stabled on the property. Now that's our interpretation. I'm not asking you to adopt it, but it's certainly reasonable to inquire as to how this property is being used and the facets of its operation, so you could make a more enlightened decision about whether or not it is truly a commercial equine operation as intended under the agricultural market statute.
If I could further enlighten our consideration, because apparently we're not enlightened enough. My daughter benefited from an experience at a riding academy, and they, I believe they actually did build her character, and they affected her athleticism. And I think we're being asked to tilt this consideration based on a convenient use of marketing material. A riding academy out here that's considered a bona fide riding academy is essentially doing quite a few of the things that this other place is lifting up and calling and marketing as physical riding academies. Riding academy, they just ride around on it and something happens.
But if it fits the state regs, then it fits the state regs.
As a riding
That's the
academy.
question. No, as an ag use, then that's the question.
And so I don't know how much further I need to go in order to be asked to consider differently, because I don't distinguish between a riding academy in its unconditional inclusion versus something else that's describing the effect of what happens when you are at a riding academy.
The procedure is up for the Suffolk County Agriculture Committee to determine whether or not it fits the use for submittal into the state, ag district law. Then the second thing is we're here to review what are the secret implications under secret. Then it goes to the legislature. Now the legislature, this all can be presented to the Suffolk County legislature, and they can further explore it, ask for additional information, and if need be, they can drop it out of the recommended program. But that's a policy issue decided by the legislature, not this committee.
Can I?
Yes.
Jim, I want to pop into secret for a minute.
Before you do that, sir, can I just make one anecdotal comment? I just want to respond to the member. I'm sorry I don't know your name, but I want to assure you that the village is not hostile to the equine therapy use. In fact, the village has engaged Kyle Collins.
I'm sorry if I suggested there was any hostility.
Okay,
I was trying to determine whether there's a compelling sense to the distinction you're drawing between the marketing of its consequences.
But the village, I want this board to know that the village is conducting a planning study for the purpose of amending its own agricultural district to permit this kind of use, with appropriate regulations. So I just want you to understand that as background to this application. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Jim? I have
Yes.
the floor for a moment or two. Mr. Pizzulli,
Yes.
my name's Mike Kaufman, just so you know who I
I know,
am.
Mike. I know very
The arguments you've presented are very, very skillful. However, I think you're bootstrapping tremendously. You're trying to tie zoning and planning issues to seeker. I don't think that that really, shall we say, exists in the world of seeker. Okay? And again, very, very, very skillfully done. But village zoning is basically irrelevant to the inquiry under seeker. Okay? That is my big problem with what you're arguing. This property is surrounded by parkland on three and a half sides. Yes, about 2.5 sides. Okay? We've got an overriding state purpose, which apparently this property meets, to protect a specific type of environment which the state apparently favors. It's already zoned agricultural. It's surrounded by parkland. I don't see the impact upon the general area. And again, I'm doing a seeker inquiry. I don't see it as a zoning issue. It's already zoned ag. Compatibility, I don't see, whether, strike that. Regarding compatibility, is it compatible with the surrounding area? I've got parkland, I've got unoccupied areas on 2.5 sides of this. I don't see the impact, the generalized impact, possibly upon the houses that are right over there.
Across the street.
Okay, across the street, well, there are there's some structures on our map to the southwest, near as I can tell.
A cul-de-sac subdivision.
Okay, but it seems that there's a little bit of a buffer over there. Regardless, it's a localized impact. I don't see a generalized impact. I also would like to point out there are 237 agricultural districts in the state of New York, 23,360 farms inside those districts. 30% of the total New York State land is in agricultural district right now. There's a state imperative to this, which is these people are trying to take advantage of. That's their call if they want to enter into the discussion, and it is the county's call as to whether they want to entertain it. Evidently, the Farmland Committee has looked at this, and from their particular perspective, which I'm going to get into in a minute, they seem to think that it meets the criteria of farmland or agricultural districts, or meets the criteria for inclusion in those particular programs. That's a policy question for them, not a policy question for us. I don't wish to argue that particular issue. Our issue is seeker, but you do see if you will, in the state law and in the county, an imperative, if you will, to preserve agriculture wherever possible. This county has bought tens of thousands of acres of land, has preserved through development rights tens of thousands of acres, mostly out east, but some out west, and we're seeing that right now in these applications, one from town of Huntington, etc. And the concept is to provide, if you will, preservation of a certain type of environment. Our charge here is to look at whether this enrollment is environmentally detrimental or environmentally benign. Right now, I'm not seeing the evidence to say that this is a bad thing. I keep on coming back to neg deck, neg deck, neg deck. Compatible? Again, the policy decision of overriding state purpose is kind of outside of our purview. I got parkland around this thing. I don't see the impact upon the village that, again, you may see and that the mayor may see. I just don't see it. In terms of the decision we're being asked to do today, to recommend to the county legislature if there's an environmental impact, I'm just not seeing it.
Dan?
Michael, in terms of impact and linking it to zoning, Old Nichols Road is the arterial, the single arterial going through the village there. Okay. Now, if you look at what Tom had mentioned, the difference between, let's say, what a riding academy would generate in terms of traffic, okay, drawing mostly from a local area, versus a riding academy that is used for therapeutic purposes, which may draw considerably from perhaps even Nassau County and further east, versus a traditional farm whose trip generation rate would be considerably lower than both of those two.
You're
And
guessing,
that is an
though.
environmental impact.
You're guessing, that's the
I
problem.
am not.
Existing use.
I'm not.
Thank you.
It's an existing use that's the
right
traffic
now.
is being generated.
It's an existing use that's not currently permitted in the zone.
But what else is in the zone, Larry?
I just can't get away from whether or not we should actually throw it back to the Ag Committee. I wonder if the Ag Committee actually has visited the site and see what goes on. I look at this, 1/8 of the property is dedicated to a swimming pool. 1/16 is dedicated to parking lot. And I just, I thoroughly approve the therapeutic use of horses. My wife's into it and all that sort of stuff. However, I'm wondering if the shady side of this operation isn't whether the county has misinterpreted the ag rule.
All right, let me say something here too. One of the things that should be pointed out is the issue before the CEQ today is to make a recommendation to the legislature with respect to SECRA. It's simply a recommendation. This board's recommendation is not binding with respect to SECRA or anything else. The SECRA determination is up to the Suffolk County Legislature. They are the entities involved with making a decision as to whether the action proceeds or not. So I would like to mention that. So once this leaves our board, the recommendation goes to the Suffolk County Legislature, and you have the right to present your case before the Suffolk County Legislature. And then I assume you have the right to present it before the state board before it goes up there for adoption as well.
We have plenty of opportunity to address the merits, so thank you. I'm going to wrap up because you have time limitations and so do we. But just let me say to Mr. Kaufman, without conceding whether or not zoning should be taken into consideration with the secret determination, that's your interpretation. We can respectfully differ on that. But on the secret, okay, this application was pending for more than 3 months without benefit of an environmental assessment form. The statute, the regulations call for the review at the earliest possible phase in the application process. The EAF wasn't even submitted or prepared. Let me finish that. Okay, I promise to be brief. Until May 12th. The regulations call for making a determination of significance and identifying an action as soon as possible in the application process, which commenced on February 7th, 2012. And until recently, probably was going to be presented as a type 2 action, which it's clearly not. The form itself that this county is using considers this action to be the legislative adoption of a plan, local law, ordinance, administrative rule, or regulation. It's none of the above. It's a recommendation to include a property in a state agricultural district that has benefits and incentives that you're not aware of, the Farmland Protection Board may or may not have been aware of, that there was no examination made. And that's where I'm saying the completion of an EAF would have been helpful.
Let me
Mr. Kaufman, I promise I'll agree. Let me finish. If an EAF had been prepared, the use would have been identified better. And then staff, county planning, could have analyzed that use in more depth. No examination was made of the use. So that when it got to this point in the process, no one's really considered whether or not this is an equine operation or physical therapy use. And I'm not saying we object to either one, but there's been no examination of that question. And I think an environmental assessment form, a full one, would have at least described the existing operation to the point where you could have had more information in the information-making process, which is the Ag Farmer Protection Board, not you.
All right.
And that's all I'm going to say.
And let me ask you a question. This is bothering me a little bit. Okay. Mr. Pizzulli has brought up the fact of seeker and when it's supposed to be invoked. First question should be to Andy if he's around, and to John, and to Jim. Does farmland have any secret jurisdiction?
Well, just the inclusion of any property in an ag district is under SECRA, in action.
Okay.
Any, building a farm structure, that kind of thing is exempt under secret.
Swimming pools and everything else. Whatever's on the
And
property.
I guess I'd just say with this, we don't know the exact regulations. This board, I think, is not completely versed in the exact regulations of what the farmland protection.
But they have a different jurisdiction, that's the problem.
So some of the, they have 50%, of the property. There's different regulations that they have considered, that this board.
But generally in my experience, okay, they've not dealt with seeker. Also, generally in the past, this has been considered to be a type 2 action administrative. So question, if we're right now, okay, I'm just trying to draw out what's going on. Assuming without deciding that farmland does not have seeker jurisdiction, okay, seeker then gets invoked how? When it comes to us for these recommendations.
Right.
Okay, so that's the question. Is that the earliest? I mean, when did we find out that these properties were going to be put into or suggested to be put into the program?
Well,
a couple months ago.
Right.
When did the Ag Committee make the decision?
Loretta, do you have?
April 29th.
April 29th.
So April 29th. So in essence, this wasn't even a consideration to be placed before the legislature until that board made its decision.
And
April 29th.
Right.
And then it has to go through normal procedures.
When it was, then basically an EAF was prepared before it's going to go before the legislature.
Correct. And it was timely.
Okay. Assuming again, without deciding that the action was only created on April 29th. What day is today? 21st of May?
21st, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
We've had this for, I don't know, a little while. Less than a month. It's pretty, and it is coming before us in our regular course of action. And we do make a recommendation to the legislature. Assuming, without deciding, that everything is triggered by farmland making its final decision, in my opinion, it's coming to us in the proper and timely fashion. It can be argued, obviously, that farmland, knew about this a year ago, but that's the applicant coming in and making, starting that portion of the process. Should seeker have been done? Well, that's the critical question for me. Does farmland do seeker? From what I understand and from what I've seen in the past, generally that's outside of their jurisdiction. We're the ones who do seeker. At least initially, we get the first bite. So I don't see, again, despite these skillful arguments, trying to say that seeker should have been invoked earlier. Formally, I'm not seeing it. Informally, questionable. I don't fully see it at this point in time. And then if you're talking about Sienta, about notice, you've obviously been there, etc. Your appearances there, contesting that, to some degree, do obviate any issues under seeker. Yes, is there a possible lawsuit over there? Yes. But the fact that you appeared, you know that this as well as I do, you make appearances, you essentially waive in certain ways your objections under seeker. You've had the opportunity several times.
That's very skillful. That's totally incorrect. You waive the notice, you waive defects in notice of the meeting, but you don't waive your rights and objections.
You're not, no, you don't waive your rights and objections, but you're not waiving.
All right, well,
I'm not going to go
Larry?
into that.
I just can't get away from this. He stated, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, there are 300 people that use this. We don't have any environmental impact statement to look at to see how do they handle the waste of 300 people. 400. I don't know what they use in terms of and do with medical waste. I see no evidence on the photograph that there's even a horse ring. I just find this use as a horse farm is really sort of dubious.
Can I help here a little bit? If I can give you some of the background of the information that was provided to us in the application and what was presented to the board, so that you understand what the criteria that they looked at and how it was evaluated. At this point, the application states that the property has been in active agricultural use for more than 5 years, and the equine operation generates an average annual gross sales of greater than $50,000. Property is 7.1 acres. More than 50% of the property is used for an equine operation, and a total of 25 horses are stabled on the subject land. Furthermore, more than 50% of the lot contains agricultural soils. While the board typically considers commercial horse boarding or a commercial equine operations as defined in New York State Ag Markets Law, the subject operation that is designated a 401c3 nonprofit organization appears to meet the minimum acreage and income requirements for a commercial equine operation. The equine operation provides riding lessons as part of a comprehensive therapeutic equine program that uses horses to facilitate growth, learning, and healing for a varied population, including children and adults with disabilities, those who have been abused or neglected, the military, and the economically comprised. Identifies riding lessons at New York State Ag and Markets Law also identifies riding lessons as a commercial equine activity. Now, they met the criteria by which the board would, recommend inclusion into the ag district. What other uses are on the property may or may not exist, and that is a local zoning purview. So that is the information that was provided to us in the application. I know that I've driven past that operation for many years. It's been there. There's a sign, Palomine Equestrian Center. There's, corrals. There are stables. It is a viable commercial equine operation, if that helps you.
Larry?
Can I say something now, sir? No. Yeah, is it okay? Yeah. All right. My name is Alan Dorman. I'm the mayor of the village of Islandia, and I'm really glad I came here today. I wasn't going to. I was just going to leave it up to the experts, including yourself. All right. But I figured, I had a feeling that I should come here and just express another side of it that you're not hearing, and you're probably not going to hear. Okay. Some valid questions that are brought up here. The way I see this particular piece of property, and by the way, I'm in that community 35 years. I'm the mayor 9 years. I've been reelected 3 times. I don't know if there's going to be a 4th. I may just retire and forget the whole thing. But I retired in 2005, and then I do this. So I'm not a politician. I'm just somebody in the neighborhood who ran for mayor and won, and then said, what the hell did I just do? But that happened. If I were to come into this beautiful area that you have right here, and I was to purchase that building right next door from you, say sold it, and I told you I'm gonna have horses there, I'm gonna have animals there, I'm gonna treat it in such a way that you approved, and that's why you sold it to me. And then I sneakingly, made it into a physical therapist center. Well, we could take it a step further. Let's say your house at home, and next door I buy your house, it's zoned residential, and all of a sudden I put a sign outside, it's a physical therapist. I hire 4 people to come to my place and do physical therapy, whether it's with the horses or it's not. And I agree with you with the horses, I think it's a great thing. But I go ahead and I just changed your zoning. I just ignored your residential zone and made it into a medical. Now, there's no handicap parking. There isn't any adequate parking. There aren't no drainage whatsoever. Okay? There isn't any ADA facilities. These people that come out, let's say I'm next door to your house, they come out of a handicap van and they're put into a wheelchair. Well, okay, so you can wheel it into a house. You're wheeling it through mud at this equestrian. You're wheeling it through mud. This is nothing less than a medical facility, a business being run. It's a medical facility illegally operating on an agricultural piece of property, its own agricultural. That's what this is. Now, you're here for secret. I don't mean to be rude. You're here for secret. I sit on the planning board in the village of Islandia for the past 9 years. I wouldn't even look at entertaining secret if that applicant didn't conform to everything within the zones and the codes of that village. I wouldn't even entertain it. I tell them to straighten it out.
Has the village entered into a suit against this
property owner for violation of zoning ordinance and
They have
everything
been
else?
served with notices. We're not going back and forth because they're not answering to any of them. What they're doing is trying to hide under this. And they think this is their salvation and everything, and it's not. And I'm not here to ridicule you or the procedure or anything like that. You just have to understand, we're 2.5 mile radius, our village. 3,300 residents, 1,100 homes. Small place. We're surrounded by commercial property. Surrounded. We can't have people coming in to our village, a business coming into our village and changing or ignoring our zoning. Just ignore us. Agriculture, I'll put a medical unit there.
Eva?
Are they dispensing medicine?
That I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Are they? I don't
We do not know that, but they are employing.
By the way, just to
I
let
don't
you
know,
know,
but if
3 or
you
4
have-
of us live in villages.
Excuse me?
3 or 4 of us at this table live in villages.
Well, then
so we
you
are aware of what
understand
you're talking
exactly,
about.
people incorporate, one of the main reasons why people incorporate into a village. What's the main reason? To control their zoning and their codes. That's the main reason. There's probably a litany of other reasons. You want to control the things that are coming into your neighborhood. You want to protect the integrity of your neighborhood. That all has to do with it. But our zoning and our codes, we want to control them. And that's why you become, especially a village that's surrounded by commercial property. We can't give that up.
That's understood. Now, I want to move this along. Larry, we'll go to Larry, and then basically I'd like to, entertain some type of,
Well, can I just say one thing, please? You talk about the medications. I'm not familiar whether they're doing that. But in their own admission, this is from their website. If you go on their website, you see exactly what I'm talking about right here. You know, they treat for substance abuse. I don't know what that has to do.
Well, we don't know what treat means. Treat could
Well,
be
substance
therapy.
addiction.
Yeah, but it says,
Get on a horse.
yeah, get on a horse. It
Okay.
doesn't necessarily mean there's any kind of medicine.
That helps, I guess.
It
That's
could be.
part of that?
No, yeah, it could
I
be.
don't know.
You don't
Okay.
know.
Well, there's a number of disorders here, abuse, this thing, that thing. There's, in their plans right here, on their website, it says expansion. The plans have been drawn up to convert the old barn into a treatment center. So we have a physical therapist, we have treatment centers, we have a medical facility. That's what we have.
Larry?
Isn't that what your neighbor?
One more thing, and then I'd like to...
I would just, they have less than 1/3 of an acre per horse. Any reasonable horse zoning, if you will, would be at least an acre or 2 acres if you go to a real horse country, not less than 1/3 of an acre. This is abuse of animals on top of everything else.
Well, we don't know if those are 25 horses, or it is ridiculous.
We also don't know if they go on the
If they're there
park.
all the time.
We don't know.
Because
Well, they
that
state in their
facility is not big enough. I
application,
designed 2 horse farms. It's
They
not
state
it's
in
big
their
enough.
They stay in our, they stable 25 horses.
25 horses.
At one time.
Yes, that's what they
So they-
state in the application.
At one, that's ridiculous.
Well,
It's almost on.
If I might move it along, okay?
Okay.
The CEQ, nor the county, don't have the jurisdiction to review existing land uses and whether or not they conform to zoning and whether or not they're viable land uses and everything else. Okay, that's not the county's jurisdiction, that's not the CEQ's jurisdiction. We can't go out and start looking at existing land use as to whether they comply to environmental regulations. Otherwise, you people will never leave this room. Okay, that's not your jurisdiction, nor do you want to be here. The issue before us today is placement of this parcel and these other parcels in the ag district, and what is of existing uses, the environmental impact under SECRA. Now, you make a recommendation here today. Now, that goes before the legislature. The legislature makes their final secret determination. And at that point, I assume the legislature can drop out any parcels they want to drop out of that resolution and ask for further information and existing information or further environmental review and everything else like that. However, at this point in time, I'd like to move the question along with respect to the placement of these parcels in the ag district, and anything you want to put in your recommendation to the legislature is fine.
So you're saying you see this as an administrative decision for inclusion in the program?
Yes, to some extent. Yeah, I mean, in the past, they were type 2 actions.
Yeah.
All right, yes.
Mr. Chair, I promise, I know I said final, or just one more sentence, please, as a coder. You make a recommendation on the secret determination, and everything you just said is understood, and I couldn't disagree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more.
Was that the sentence for the record?
It truly wasn't a Freudian slip. I do, you make evident good sense. However, I think, and I'm just positing this as a suggestion, you can make a recommendation on the secret action before you, which includes 7 parcels. Nothing prevents you from deciding not to recommend one parcel. Okay? Maybe you want more information before you make a recommendation, but if you have to make a conclusion on all 7, so be it, then the legislature will deal with all those questions. And it truly wasn't a Freudian slip. So, and one other thing, just so you know, there really is no prejudice to doing that to the applicant, because the applicant can resubmit in the next 30-day enrollment period, which is next March. So they can come into the Ag District process again, whether this application is recommended for approval or ultimately denied. So there is no prejudice in terms of the request to be included in the Ag District. They can renew that request if this application fails. So having said that, thank you very much for...
John, if staff could just make one last point, is that the Agricultural Protection Board is the board set up whether to recommend parcels or not to the legislature. So I think just need to keep in mind what the CEQ's role is.
They're the policymakers.
Yeah.
They looked at whether they think this should be recommended for Ag District or not. Our role is, this is an existing use, and what is the secret implications of adding properties to an agricultural district? So
That's what's before the board today.
Why can we request the environmental assessments for?
You got it.
No, we have three review sheets.
Yeah, it's a generalized term, put it that way.
Yeah,
Not much in it.
but Larry, in terms of an existing use, what's there to put it in a form? It's an existing use. You are simply placing this in an ag district. That's simply an existing use. You're not reviewing what are the current operations. You're not allowed to review what are the, whether it complies to existing zoning. That's up to the village, and to go after these people for being in violation of the zoning ordinance, and that's a legal question, for them to handle. In addition, they can make their case before the Suffolk County Legislature whether or not they think this should be placed in an ag district because it meets the merits and doesn't meet their zoning. But from a secret point of view, I have to ask the CEQ, what is your determination? How do you want to proceed? The recommendation is unlisted action, negative declaration for placing these things in an ag district. It's not whether or not you think they, meet the letter of the law and whether or not they're, conforming to all environmental conditions and pollution and everything else, because if that's the case, you can take 3/4 of Long Island and take them off the map and shut them down. So the case before the CEQ is simply what is the requirements under secret and your recommendation before the legislature.
Well, what you're telling us is that no matter what we do, we don't have no choice.
No, he's saying this is an administrative, and I agree with him, this is essentially an administrative decision, not changing anything to the property, not doing anything to the property. It's including it in a state legal program. That's all it is. It's a paperwork exercise. That's really all it is. Are you changing the zoning? Are you changing the use? We don't have, as Jim was saying, we don't have control over the zoning. We don't have control over the pesticides and the other property, okay? This is a right to farm state, though, remember that.
But this isn't, I would like to see the justification of how this is farming.
Well, it meets the criteria. If you look at the ag
No,
laws,
I'm not sure it does.
It does, Larry.
you look at the ag
The
laws.
information that was
Has anybody
presented to
from
us.
Suffolk County gone down and
Yes,
visited?
I have. I did.
And what are they doing with the 300 people's
That was
waste? What are
not-
they
that-
doing with
That
the...
information was, that piece of information, the 300, was not provided to us. I never saw anywhere near that amount of cars or people on the property when I went to it.
There were 18 cars in the picture.
I passed by there, I've never seen spillover traffic.
But that's a subject.
But that's subjective,
Suffolk County
and
Department of Health Services.
that doesn't,
So, I mean, that's.
there
what
are
this person
criteria
wrote.
that were provided. They met the criteria of the board with regard to how many horses they have, what percentage of the property was being utilized as an equestrian center, and that was what the board made their decision upon.
If they got less than a third of an acre per horse, they're doing something wrong.
They submit there was 25 horses?
Yes.
I mean, that's up to the board.
Well, Larry, are the horses being maltreated? Are they being not fed?
You can't, you're
Are
not
they-
supposed to do it.
Okay, I know there are, listen, in my village, what, it's 1 horse per 2 acres, or 2 horses per 2 acres, I think that's about what our limits are, because we want to spread things out. But other villages have much higher. You look at Belmont, where they got thousands.
Well, that's a different situation.
Different situation.
Yeah.
The village is 1 horse per half
So
acre,
Secretariat.
Okay.
so they should have 14 horses.
Right.
So they're in violation, and again,
Absolutely.
you're going.
Again,
on-
yeah,
Absolutely,
that's
and
a
they don't have
zoning
the
issue.
facilities.
That's,
Again, that's a zoning issue.
We're not a planning board. But that's up to the village.
That's
Yeah.
right.
To go after the property owner for being in violation of zoning ordinance and shutting them down.
Right.
That's not the.
So you
That's
don't
not-
think,
of this board.
not having facilities for 300 or 400 people a week to go to the bathroom is
It's not
a
our
problem?
purview.
That's
No,
not, that's a zoning issue, again.
But you don't have to recommend the next day, but if you want lack of information, you have lack.
It's an existing use.
It's not, it's not the
This is the use that has impacts, and you don't know what they are.
Yeah, but there's a lot of existing uses in Suffolk County that have all kinds of impacts, but this board has no jurisdiction.
But you can't give them a negative debt just because you don't have that information in front of you. You
Yeah, no,
seek
no.
that information.
No, we're not here to review the land use. We're not review the
That's your
decision.
position.
We're here to
That's
review
yours.
of placing an existing operation
Right,
I agree.
into an ag district.
but you don't have all the information.
Yes.
So how can you vote?
We have the
We have the
information that was
existing information.
required by the
This
application.
council's not to review whether or not, an existing operation is in violation with health department laws and everything else. That's the village's responsibility to go after these people and to notify the health department as well as the ag board.
The statute says that only to be eligible for the ag district, you have to have at least 7 acres and make more than $10,000 a year. That's eligibility. That's not criteria.
No,
And
this-
I don't know, excuse me, I don't think you can make a recommendation on a secret determination without having all of the information at your fingertips.
This
We
board
have an
doesn't review that.
application. They filled out the application. The information met the guidelines of the board.
That's how most of the residential construction occurs around here. Nobody makes rational judgment anymore.
Mr. Kaplan, not in my village, not in your village, that's certainly not the case. Because in my village, as in your village,
I know, I used
we're
to be
required to
your
submit an
village
environmental
government
assessment form for a single-family home.
Sir, I know your village very well.
I know.
Okay, I used to be part of your
Well,
government, so
I mean, I'd like to move the question, one way or the other. I mean,
A single-family home gets
I
more
didn't
than this.
finish what I was going to say. I'm not going to right now.
any recommendations here?
I recommend we send it back.
You can't send,
Table it is the most you can do. I mean, what, you can do a pause deck?
Sure.
You just get more information.
We can't do anything. Why is it here?
Why is it the applicant?
We're being asked to react to questions that just aren't in the scope of what we're allowed to consider for the decision point. I would love to look more at what I started the conversation with. Until you show me the rates of production, not the dollars that they earn, but the rates of production, the application of nitrogen, until you show us that, there's nothing about environmental to discuss. Big, important, all those great thresholds that we have no numbers to them, and that's not part of what we can talk about.
right, but you can also ask to have a review of Suffolk County's farmland policy and how they're going to tackle
But
those issues.
not for this guy's application.
No, exactly, but that's one way
different.
to get at
So
it.
I want to go back to that level, and if up at that level, we can also say, by the way,
But we're being
we're
asked.
shunting things through, and it looks like we're approving of the operation. We're just doing
Right.
No, you're
We're being
asking
asked
to
to
make a
bless
secret
something that I
determination.
think probably does not rigorously meet the criteria of the ag
It does
stuff.
sound like we have traction to
Horses.
But
make
that's-
that.
But that's the
Just send them
purview
to
of the
present.
board, Larry. The
Well, that's
board
why I'd like
has
to
the
send it back.
ability, the board has the ability to create guidelines, to, make a recommendation to include or not include properties that come before this board for inclusion into an ag district. They did their job, they have their criteria, good, bad, or indifferent, and they have an application that we require of each applicant. They filled out the form, they made the criteria, the board voted on it, and they recommended it to be included in the ag district. That's the extent of this process.
You don't think they did their homework.
What they're doing beyond that on the property is not the purview of this
authority to
program.
determine whether another board did their due diligence.
In our labs report, we have, for example, people being appointed to a plumber's board. I don't know whether they're good or they're bad. I recognize one of the names is the union leader. Maybe if you, let's assume that I'm anti-union. Hey, somebody just made a recommendation, okay? Is it an environmental impact? I don't know. But am I going to question the recommendation?
We're here to make
with questioning another
we're
board.
here to make a secret determination.
That's it.
You're asked to give further protection to something that may be marginal.
That's not your
No.
authority.
No, Tom's saying every one of these properties is marginal because we don't know what's going on with the pesticides and things like that.
Maybe, and there's no, we don't have the ability to follow up on that. Perhaps as a recommendation, we could put accompanying the programmatic decision we make that says, we'd like to re-examine the policy. But I don't think we can burden any one applicant.
No, you can't. It's before you to make a recommendation.
By the way, this is, John, this is coming in as a package or as a package recommendation?
Right.
Or are these separate?
No,
Under the LADs I was looking at.
Right, so
These
the
are separate or
EAF
not?
was done for the inclusion of parcels into the ag district. But then at the legislature, each parcel will be voted on whether.
So in other words, each parcel before the legislature will be voted on and have a recommendation with respect to secret.
I got a LADs report someplace, I was looking at it.
So
If you look at the LADs, it does break it down.
Right.
That's my
In your
question.
packet, you have the individual resolutions for each application.
That's what I was talking about.
So, in other words, the CEQ can make a determination to rule on each one of these separately based on a resolution before the legislature and make a recommendation that way, instead of as a package.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you avoid the type 1 argument.
Again, but that's
The
not.
project before the legislature are separate
Who's
packages.
tearing the barn down? The barn is inherently agricultural.
I mean, Loretta, on the resolutions before the legislature, they're dealt separately. Each resolution has a negative declaration in it, does it not?
Yeah,
That
on
is
the LAD
dependent on what comes out of
Starting
this
at
board, this
1493.
council today.
Okay, starting at 1493 and running through around 1500 on the LADs. Okay, these are, look like they are done
Each of the
separately.
resolutions in your packet is now, was laid on table at the legislature. So what is in your packet is what, by resolution, is how they were presented to the
All right, so
legislature.
in essence, CEQ can make a recommendation
Yeah.
separately for each one.
Loretta, we heard that the barn is going to be torn down and it's going to be made into some sort of a physical therapy facility. How are the 25 horses going to be housed on this agricultural property?
They'll be eaten for dogs.
That's something I can't answer.
Well, you should
And-
be able to.
I don't think so, because this is all preposition. It is exactly reviewed as it is, used today. Whatever they propose in the future would have to go before the village for consideration for any kind of zoning change or improvements to the property, still all have to go through local village zoning regulations or
Larry,
subdivision.
what you're basically doing is bootstrapping zoning and planning onto an environmental issue. Now, some of your environmental issues are valid. I don't deny that. Okay, and I'm not objecting to anything that anybody has said here regarding all of that. Okay, but when we start bootstrapping a little too far, that's when we start getting into issues that are outside of our
Well, they're
purview.
policy issues.
Yeah.
I'd like to make the recommendation that the CEQ proceed on an individual basis in terms of reviewing each parcel, and that you make certain recommendations. I mean, with respect to this particular issue, with respect to the SECRA, I mean, you can make a recommendation to some extent that it's an unlisted action or a type 2 action, but however, based on information presented to CEQ, you think the legislature should look into the matter further as to whether or not this actually meets zoning and policy, decisions and everything else, and you could put that in your cover letter.
Why wouldn't
Again.
you do that to everyone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
don't
you
see
could-
what the difference is.
One thing, a possibility the CEQ could do is you have the unlisted action with the determination, and if it's determined to be negative declaration, the reasons why. And in one of the reasons, you could say,
Yeah, but you know something, yeah.
and then that would apply to all, the legislature should consider,
Should consider these certain
The
issues.
validity
of the assumption.
But you know something, Tom, you've got the entire program, you've got the entire state program. Essentially, with any, excluding Palomine, with any of these farmland parcels where there's nitrogen being thrown off or pesticides or whatever, unless it's totally organic, and even organic throws off stuff, unless it's totally organic, you're basically gutting the program. Is that a policy call that we can
Gutting the
make?
program? What?
Gutting, you're basically saying,
Tearing it apart.
Right.
gutting it and saying, well, we can't really say we don't see an environmental benefit to it.
That's not gutting the program. That's enabling the program to continue.
But that's not a distinction New York State makes. At this point in time, pesticides are still allowed, and nitrogen fertilizers and all sorts of fun stuff is still allowed at state level on all these farmland properties, again, excluding Palomine, okay? And again, we have the right to farm laws, and we have the exclusion from seeker. By saying, let's assume that you would be saying that it's a pos deck to all of these parcels being in there, you're essentially going against every rule and regulation there is out there, the entire concept of protecting farms and trying to keep farmland going.
Well, secret exempts farmland,
Yeah.
farmland management. Yeah,
It exempts it.
One adverb. Sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that almost, nobody can meet that criteria unless you go totally organic, and even then you're throwing off waste to one degree or another.
I would recommend that we deal with these on a case-by-case basis, and therefore certain things can proceed. And if the council, recommends that further information is necessary for any one of these things, we can also do that. But you don't hold everything up.
Second. That needs motion.
All right, so
No. All right, I'll start it off. All right, let's do 1493. That's the Darrell Glennon property. 0300, which town is that?
That's East
East
Hampton.
Hampton.
Okay, that's the one
Yeah.
acre. Okay, unlisted, negative declaration. Motion.
I'll second.
those in favor?
do we have reasons? Do we want to come?
What are the resolutions?
So the resolution
Yeah,
has,
see, I have a concern with the approach. We can continue to proceed, I just want to voice my concern. We are now more explicitly leaving out any statements of caveats or concerns or assumptions on a parcel by parcel basis, when I could look at the photo from this first one and really have to squint hard to feel comfortable about it. But we're not going to say what. On the other hand, since Palomine had an expression and an extended discussion,
yeah.
it gets zoomed in on. Now it feels prejudicial, and I don't want to go there if we can avoid that.
If I can,
read into the resolution, all these resolutions have the same verbiage, I believe. They're saying that proposals are unlisted actions, and when you're, if in doubt, you go the more conservative, so rather than say it's type 2, it's an unlisted action, and will not have a significant impact on the environment for the following reasons. The proposed action will not exceed any of the criteria in section 617.7 of Title 6 NYCRR, which sets forth thresholds for determining significant effect on the environment as demonstrated in the environmental assessment form. 2, the proposal does not appear to significantly threaten any unique or highly valuable environmental or cultural resources as identified in or regulated by the Environmental Conservation Law of the State of New York or Suffolk County Charter and Code. And 3, the parcel or parcels do not appear to suffer from any severe environmental developmental constraints limiting soil properties, a high groundwater table, and/or unmanageable slopes, and be it further resolved that, determination not significant negative be issued. Note that's what's in each one of these resolutions.
And so my question is, with regard to the first point, there's the word thresholds used.
Secret establishes all those thresholds.
And at least for the farm parcel, the primary farm parcels,
Right.
And yeah, in terms of secret, farmland is exempt.
cool.
If I-
People like to eat.
If I can just,
Yes.
because I know that parcel, I'm not a great fan of who's running it, however, it's relatively benign in the neighborhood. It's been there for a very long time. The impact environmentally, from what I can see, is minimal because he hardly does anything there. And yes, he does have, well, that's what he claims. I don't know how true that is, but, you know, he often brings in other things, you know, whatever. It's relatively benign. It's well liked actually by many people in the neighborhood because it adds a certain charm, East Hampton charm to things. So,
Here we go on a site-by-site
Yeah.
right.
And
color
I guess I
commentary.
would have
just don't know if that's-
one other question. If we're going site by site, and we get to one, what would we be doing? Saying to the Agricultural Protection Board to reconsider their
Well,
decision?
when
I
we
would
get to
not.
that point, let's make that determination. You know.
All right.
So we're at number one.
1493, I think, has adequate language, and I made a motion, Eva seconded. You want to call the question on 1493?
All right, those in favor? Those opposed? Those abstentions? All right, the motion passes.
1494, same motion. And again, I'm forgetting my numbers. 0400 Square. Okay, Huntington, yeah, this is property I know.
All right, any?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Eva. Those in favor?
We're voting this.
Those opposed? Those abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
I'm going to skip 1495 for a minute. Okay, let's see. 1496, same motion.
Yeah, see if those numbers.
I'm looking at the labs report. Okay. Because that has the actual numbers on there. 1496.
That would be
is
the
0600
Edward
property.
Partridge property in the town of Riverhead.
Yeah,
All right, this is right there.
okay, same motion.
This Edward.
All right, do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? The motion passes.
1497, Channing Daughters Winery LLC. Is it in the box?
Yes.
I'll break it.
Michael's motion, Eva's second. Those in favor? Opposed? You're opposed?
No,
Okay,
slow.
all right, those in favor, opposed, abstentions, all right, the motion passes.
1498, I'll make the same motion. I'm still trying to figure something out on it.
Well,
This is the
now we're
Caulfield.
approving, now we're making a motion with regard to a disapproval also.
Right, there's
it's an
one
approval.
parcel in this application that was approved and one parcel that was disapproved.
Yeah.
Well, which ones are the disapproved?
The 0600 76-2-12.01. It's in the resolution.
Well, if it was disapproved by the ag, why is it going before the legislature?
We have to present all recommendations, whether it was an approval for inclusion or not.
Yeah, the other one is 39 acres. The one they're approving is 39 acres, and then the other one that they're disapproving is 4.
Correct.
Okay.
There was no farming going on in the small parcel.
Okay, well, again, same motion. I'll listen to that.
Second,
Second.
Eva. All right, those approved? Okay.
All right, now.
Disapproval, abstentions, all right, motion passes.
Okay. We're not dealing with ticks. Okay, 1495 is the curious one.
Wait, you missed one, 1500
Oh, okay. We're disapproving.
MF and LK.
Okay. I move to disapprove this one, unlisted net deck.
Second.
Wait, you're
We
approving,
dropped down.
1,500 is which?
It's the same one, approving, authorizing the disapproval of the new parcel. This is,
You can't approve or disapprove. You gotta give a
Unlisted
secret
neg deck for
determination.
it's an unlisted net deck, is what I said.
All right, so it's an unlisted neg deck, you know, with a motion, however, the board will, you know, recommendation will carry on that.
Yeah.
So you're approving it.
All right, second.
You're approving the
Approve.
disapproval?
Yeah.
No,
Well, that's the way it's phrased.
But the
Yeah.
CQ is doing the
Secret.
secret
Yes.
Right.
for
It is
a
unlisted.
disapproval
Exact-
into the ag.
Their
Correct.
idea.
Correct.
All right,
I will not use the word approval again, okay?
okay, all right,
Now.
so
Because you want more than
those in
95.
favor, opposed, abstentions, passes.
All right, before we dive into 1495, okay?
Now, is that all of them, Mike?
No, 1495 is the last
No,
one.
the last one, okay, the other ones have been done.
Let's get it.
That's fine, I don't have any problems, just open it for discussion.
All right, I'd like to open 1495, well, to do that, I gotta make a motion. Motion to unlisted neg deck for 1495.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, what would, let's get a sense around the table. What would we like to include in the motion? Okay, there's been a lot of discussion. Assuming we approve it,
And just
assuming we approve the motion.
Right.
the secret.
The seeker motion, thank you. Assuming we did that, it's clear to me that some of the members want to have input, if you will, into, and recommendations to the legislature. Let's hear them.
I would like to at least acknowledge the concerns which the CEQ has and learned about regarding the need for this operation to be subject to local zoning, because that's where it left off in my mind. There were lots of concerns, there were lots of suppositions about what might happen, and this is a local initiated program, as it says in the preamble. So I would like to, what's the opposite of a preamble? I'd like to have an acknowledgement that there is a local zoning concerns which we...
I think here the council has an option here. The proposal can be forwarded without recommendation, okay? And the reasons why there is no recommendation is because there seem to be, questions regarding compliance with zoning and other uses of the property, current use of the property, and, stabling of horses and everything else, and that leave it to the legislature, either proceed or not proceed.
But that would be passing judgment on the findings of the other board, and I don't think we intend to do that.
Yeah, if we're going to say something, we have to, I have no problem.
Because I thought we weren't supposed to...
Well, we can always acknowledge things and say things. Okay, we're not precluded from bringing up these.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to use a
Okay,
verb like
obviously-
acknowledge as opposed to...
I like that word acknowledge. I mean, we would acknowledge concerns regarding health department concerns, waste, current uses, local concerns and compliance, and things like that, without,
Density, yeah.
Also, what about, wasn't it raised that there has not been coordination
I wouldn't go there.
like
No.
we do everywhere else?
Yeah, but it doesn't warrant the level where you need coordination under the
Because it's as
secret
is.
Yeah.
as is. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I
don't
would
wanna
think
use the
forward
word
it without
coordinate.
recommendation
I
based
like
on
that
issues
idea.
raised at the CQ meeting and leave it in the minutes and send them over.
I like the idea of not making a recommendation for these reasons. Because I think that's really the pickle we're in.
I would just,
And then what
I would say-
happens? We
I don't know.
haven't completed the
Mary Ann,
action on our part?
if
I
this was
know.
a normal
It says
application,
you
I
must
would agree
review it
with you.
within 45 days.
But I still see this
You can
almost as a type 2.
make a recommendation. You can send it forward without recommendation relative to secret, because secret determination is ultimate for the legislature, But after 45 days, then technically you're
There's
reviewed.
there's the classification, and then there's the determination.
Right.
We can't even classify it?
Oh, yeah, you can make a recommendation,
Unlisted.
it's an unlisted action.
It would be an unlisted, I've already made that motion, and we've got it on the floor, but we also put in the caveats.
That we're not able to make a final recommendation because it's...
No, that we can't do, but we should acknowledge concerns. If we're gonna make a recommendation, you can't undercut by saying you can't do it, but we can say we have concerns.
could
But I wouldn't touch the zoning.
possible, I think Mike's motion was, Mr. Kaufman's motion was unlisted action exit declaration, and then possibly a reason in there saying, the zoning issue should be explored.
No, I don't want to go, I would not go through the zoning. I would bring up what Larry's talked about, the health department, the waste issues, local concerns. I mean, we do have the mayor here, and he has eloquently expressed what's going on. And again, I live in a village, I know what you're talking about, and I am very cognizant of those types of concerns.
But if we affirmatively state a negative declaration, we're affirmatively stating that we. That's where I feel like we're stepping on our.
I think that basically,
we're stepping on
if you forward it, without a recommendation for the following concerns, as Larry said, certain issues have been raised with turning waste. CEQA does cover controversial issues. So there is local controversy over the action that need to be explored before you proceed with CEQA.
Yeah, the waste of the animals and the people.
Well, but also the village has concerns here.
We have a conceptual concern about waste. They might have.
They might be handling it.
They might have a
handling
vial pile. They might have a waste to energy. We don't know.
Well, remember,
we just said, "Wow, that
it's
must be a lot of
300
waste."
over a week.
So
That
it's a
may be
conceptual
okay.
concern.
And the horses too.
Well, I understand that, but do you have enough information to make?
Because I have a conceptual concern with a lot of the other operations too. But what do we do with that? You told me don't do anything with it, so we didn't.
Right.
Yeah, but this rises to a threshold.
Oh, that was threshold. Yeah, that's what it was. I knew it.
You raised it.
All right, let's get a sense. You want to go with a motion and an acknowledgement, or do you want to go no rec with these are concerns?
I prefer that the DEP not be put in this position. I think this has been unfortunate. I really do.
No rec?
I hear you.
No motion,
Yeah.
no recommendation on listed deposit or whatever, with acknowledging.
Yeah, that's fine with
We
me.
have to, yeah.
Danny?
I don't even know what the.
I withdraw my motion and we just go with no recommendation and, a quick statement saying we acknowledge concerns.
We won't classify.
We won't classify. We'll ignore the staff's valiant attempts.
I don't know that we have to.
No, right now there's a motion on the floor. I said unlisted neg deck, and I would withdraw that.
You wouldn't even do unlisted.
I would.
You're going to leave it to the legislature to
That's right, make their own
Punt.
secret
go
determination.
whichever way they'd like. We're muting.
No, we would express our concerns. Okay, but we don't say list, we don't say neg deck, we don't say POS deck.
I'm more comfortable with that.
They will get the message.
Yeah, they'll get the message.
I mean, we've done that in
Exactly.
the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That the council,
They'll get the
is
message.
forwarding this stuff with
They can always
with no
report back to us.
recommendation based on issues raised at the meeting, and then send them a copy of the minutes.
All right, I'll withdraw my motion.
We've been hijacked.
Yeah, we have them.
And I'll make a motion that we punt.
And the act.
And I'll second that.
Well, is there going to be a motion that
What is it?
this is forwarded to the
Yeah, let's
legislature
forward this
without
to-
recommendation,
Thank you.
based on issues raised at the CEQ meeting?
What he said.
I'll second that.
And send them a copy of the minutes.
But you will list a few of the
Yeah, the
concerns.
Yeah.
Don't list them a few.
No, we're gonna.
It's got to be the
write it
record
down.
of the minutes, and then as
Okay.
recorded verbatim.
Right.
Not just selectively pick through the
We don't
ones
have
we think
verbatim
are
minutes
better.
anymore.
Do we
Well,
have
we
to
better
take
be
a
careful then,
We
because
proceed
there were a
then.
lot of things said, some
Where's
of which
Chris?
had higher levels of.
Hold on. Christine, you got the recorder?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we can reconstruct.
All right, so
let's
we have a
vote.
motion to that effect?
You have a
Yes,
second.
I second it.
Are you making that motion, Martin?
Yes, I made the
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. Different job punt.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your.
By the way, this is a disaster.
I hope I still could come here on June 28th.
Why do you say that?
Of course,
Grandchildren,
of course.
You gotta bring 3 ducks.
3 ducks.
Bring all.
Put Public Works here to respond to CEQ's concerns last month, and presentation is up. Yes, so last month we were here and our project for Phase 2 of CR 13 was tabled based on the looking at whether we could install bike lanes as part of this project.
Come on back with horse pass.
Well, certainly economically, we feel about that part 3, and that spoke to the issues of economically, budgetarily wise, it's not feasible right now to do that bike lane. And in that acquisitions, we would actually probably be putting at least one business out of business. And that's kind of not what we're in the business of doing. In addition to that, we do have a comprehensive bike study that is, I don't know if it's currently underway or just about ready to begin. And that will guide the department on what county roads, hooking up to state roads and to various other town roads, what we should be putting bike lanes on. And and as we progress projects now, like on CR7, which is just to the east of CR13, we have had bike lane provisions on there, and we do have wide enough shoulders if there's not a dedicated bike lane that the bicycles can still use the shoulders, and it's signed as bike lanes. As far as the development is going on, we understand that there would be some bike routes that would be, this community is kind of a community, it is proposed to be more of a walking and a bicycling type of community. So we can see where we would be able to put a bike lane eventually here onto 106 Community College Drive that would hook up with G Road into the Heartland complex with CR7. So I think we have the origins of the beginning of a comprehensive bike lane, but on CR13, we don't believe that that is really the one to do at this point in time. We would like to wait for the study to come out, and that's where we would come. Right now, if we were to do this, and economically, it's infeasible because of the acquisitions that we would have to do to these properties up here. But once we get down into this section of the job, which we would call a Phase 1 section, we do not have the capacity to put a bike lane. So even if we did acquire land, it would end right here. And so, again, we would prefer to wait for this comprehensive bike route study, and we would be able to draw a better picture of what we really need to be doing.
Are you saying if your bike plan comes out, that you might change on this?
Well, listen, if the bike study comes out and it makes a recommendation that 13 you definitely need a bike study on, and we concur with that study, then we would probably have to go out, get a budget, put a capital program together, acquire lands, and if that means put this person out of business, I mean, we would do what we would need to do.
I told Victor this earlier, and I said this to you also.
Yes.
Under AASHTO, you need 4 or 5 feet. Okay, evidently you can't find 4 or 5 feet in this program. I had suggested last time you lose one of the sidewalks. Okay.
Yes.
You and I talked briefly.
Certainly.
That's basically, if you're going to put in bike lanes now, or if you want to put them in the future, you got to lose a sidewalk someplace. Okay. Now, I like pedestrians. I occasionally am a pedestrian. I'm not always in my car. Okay. I'm not always driving Larry Swanson around or whatever. But pedestrians are valuable assets to the county. But you need 2 sidewalks in every location. I open the floor to you on that one.
Well, certainly if bike lanes were suggested that comes out of this study, is that we wouldn't lose one of the sidewalks. We would buy additional land, and whether that sidewalk area would become the bike lane and we would move the sidewalks to the additional land that we bought on either side, or we would put a bike lane behind it.
But excluding purchases, excluding takings.
Yes.
Why can't we lose one of these sidewalks?
Well, right off the bat,
give me the reason.
Certainly right off the bat, with the development that would be going on with the Heartland development, we definitely need sidewalk along the west side of CR13, certainly to bring the shopping areas up to the north. Additionally, I was just at a meeting, it was probably 3 weeks ago, with the town, and they were actually asking
Which town?
me, the town of Islip. And they were actually asking me
whether I could install sidewalk now from this hotel, which is not a hotel anymore. It is being utilized.
That's a
for
residential thing.
residential, economically disadvantaged people right now. We have a lot of people who are walking right along this shoulder. So the town has actually come to me and asked, can I put in sidewalk now?
2 sidewalks or 1?
One sidewalk on the east side of the road. So we would need sidewalk on the west side of the road just for Heartland. But now we have this situation over here. You actually see a worn path where people are actually walking along the edge of the road here. And we have been requested by the town of Islip to put in sidewalk now up to the north. So that's kind of where we're at this point in time.
Can't hear you.
And additionally, we wouldn't be able to get on a bike lane under the bridge because it would end at the bridge. We'd have to rebuild the bridge of these.
Collision.
All right, so basically you're saying you need sidewalks more than you need bike lanes.
That is correct,
All right,
yes.
so that's a balancing test.
At this point in time.
Yes.
But you also qualified, you said if you agreed that there should be bike lanes later. There was a qualification I heard you say.
Yes.
So what is on what criteria would you agree or not agree?
Well, when we have it would be the big study that would come out that would recommend various alternatives that we should have bike lanes here and there. But then there is a budgetary side to that. And that would be something that we would need to discuss as a department, make our recommendations to the county exec and to the legislature. You know, we can only make recommendations. And certainly if it said it wants a bike lane, and it seems we're not against bike lanes, but we can only make the recommendation.
I hear you. But I got to say one thing, okay? Walkoff is developing essentially a mini walkable city over there. That's the justification for the increased density and the increased heights, which are frankly out of character for the area. Okay? It's barely connected, if you will, in certain ways. Now, the county is pumping in a ton of money into the Saginaw Coast exchanges, into the Comac Roads area and things like that, and they're expanding the carrying capacity of the transportation artery in the area. We all know that, okay? But if it's being sold as a walkable, bikeable area, okay, and I'm just throwing this one out, I'm not trying to torture you or anything. Victor, I'd like to torture you. By the way, Victor's a friend of mine, so I can say that. It just, you know, I'd rather see it sooner rather than later. I really think that bicycling, it's a coming thing for a lot of people. We're the ones who requested this bicycle study way back when. I just think making bicycle access earlier in the process rather than later is probably a good thing. And I acknowledge when we're busted. We don't, you know, what is it, $170, $180 million deficit. I get that, you know, you've got constraints. I get, you know, Islip wants sidewalks and things like that. You know, maybe we're in a catch-22 or something like that. But
well, it's really more feasible on CR7 than it is on CR13.
I know you're talking about shifting traffic over.
They have all these residents here
Yeah.
going through 106 and into the developments and back into the college. So this makes a lot more sense than having bikeways alongside 13. You know, plus this southern portion of 13, we don't have the property, and it's very tight property. We have to acquire the entire
13, that's Comac Road you're talking about?
Yeah.
Aren't you're talking about expanding that to 4 lanes right now?
Well, this is actually a 4-lane exists as of now up to past the Saginaw Coast right here. Is only we expanding this to 4-lane up to the LIE. It's only about 2,000 feet of the 8,000 foot project. But that makes more sense to put the bike lane in this area than here.
And we currently have a bike route.
And we,
here to 106.
the only thing is we need to purchase some of the property or from the 106 to make that work. And that's, we're gonna look into that.
That's not all I can really ask.
Yeah, but on 15 it really doesn't make sense to add those in.
Yeah, I could just see though, you know, in the future, the residents saying, why can't we have bike lanes?
There will be here.
More bike lanes.
All the way to connect this and the community. I mean, there's nothing.
I mean, I get the flow pattern.
What is it gonna go to here? I mean,
riding through the
Yeah.
through the cloverleaf is not the easiest thing in the world to do. I get that.
Any other question?
I think I asked all of Joy's questions.
Can I have a recommendation?
All right, I'm going to give on this one. Motion unlisted, Nagdeck.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstention?
I just realized maybe I should
What?
abstain, because I wasn't
abstain?
on the initial.
Okay,
Discussion.
Dan abstains. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you
Always a
very much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
And if I can, I think it's a great idea that, you move around a little bit. What a beautiful spot. I've been on Long Island all my life. I never knew this place existed. Now I just found another place to explore. And while all this was going on, all I was doing was sitting here watching the ospreys fishing out there. I mean, it was great. It was great. When I'm done building at the end of the day at Mr. DPW, I put my hiking boots on and I'm off in the woods. So.
Just watch out, this place
There
got
are
more
trails.
ticks.
There are trails, by the way. There are marked trails,
Oh,
specifically, so
okay.
take you through, yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
Okay, if we can go on to the agenda. The first thing have the recommendations for LAD reports. The first LAD report, legislative resolutions laid on the table, April 29th, 2014. John, is there anything that should be noted with respect to these?
Yeah, so for this, if you see, it's a very large labs report. Our recommendations are on the left-hand side. There were a number of them, the CEQ has reviewed in the past. IR 1335, that was for the radio communications for the police department. There's a number of others that they've reviewed in the past. A number of them also talk about building, but they were in the planning stage, like IR 1392 talks about appropriating funds in connection with the restoration of Cannon Lake, but that's for doing a plan to do that. It's not the actual construction. So they're in,
Whose motion, whose legislator was on Cannon?
I think that's, legislative question.
They're talking about dredging, right?
I actually, not.
Yeah, that's the dredging one.
But, the staff's recommendations are on the left-hand side.
Okay. Any other questions here? Larry?
Did Kara Hahn put in a bill to prohibit use of styrene?
That was on a previous LADS report.
Okay, what's the status of that?
I believe it's being tabled at the legislature.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion here for?
Motion. We already did 50. We're on the first last?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, motion to accept staff recs.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. Next, legislative resolution laid on the table, May 13, 2014. John?
Right. So this one, our recommendations are on the left-hand side, but there are, this one did include the laid on the table for the agricultural district.
Yeah, we'll exclude those from the motion.
So we have, I think all the recommendations there are the same except for 1495, which is that there's no.
Well, we already did that.
And that we would have to change that.
We have to amend that.
Yes, okay.
Could I ask for some discussion about 1490? The acquisition of farmland development rights under the Drinking Water Protection Program?
So,
That's a different one.
right, so that is a, established program. So that these have, gone forward as type 2 administrative actions.
Yeah, this is just the development rights, so that they don't further subdivide.
I'm familiar with what it is. You're just not familiar with what I'm about to say, so if I may. Is it conceivable that we could seek to adjust that acquisition program so that it continues to do what it does in preserving this great farming land use, but also in a way that's more mindful of what Vito Monet has often reminded us, that maybe there's a way to do the rights, but perhaps those parcels would be subject to MS4 regulations.
Stormwater runoff? Attach a condition, that would be a ledge policy. We can make a recommendation on that.
And I do know that the county has a law regulating farmland development rights program, which this is. And so I think they have just gone through an amendment process for Chapter 8.
Yeah, can I add in when you're done?
Yeah, so I was going to, there is a mechanism in the county where Chapter 8 looks at the farmland protection program.
And when they looked at that protection program, have they recently decided to take a look at the
One of the things that was considered is when we look at properties to be included into our program that we buy the development rights to, that they are in an AEM program, that they're in one of the steps of an AEM program to minimize pesticides, herbicide uses, to use best management practices on the farm. Went back and forth with this. It was something that the department brought forward to the committee, and they ultimately did not include that into their alterations and update to the Chapter 8. But we're still working with the Farmland Committee to see if subsequent updates to the Chapter 8 would include that.
Is there anything that we could do in making a recommendation about 1490 that could help reopen that consideration? Or
I think, no,
Okay.
we're in contract with the owner, and
I don't necessarily mean about this one, but
yeah, but I
programmatically.
understand. Well, in other words, you know, there's nothing we can hold back. We were in contract. We didn't make any stipulations with the owner at this time that they have to do A, B, and C with regard to nitrates or pesticide use. However, we do put in our contract that they have to abide by Chapter 8 as amended. So whenever we do future amendments to Chapter 8, which may include AEM requirements, they would have to be adhere to those changes.
You're talking stormwater runoff.
Now, Loretta, that's currently, Chapter 8's currently being, in the process of being revised?
No, we already revised them last year.
And who adopts that?
The legislature adopted it last year.
And it was adopted as a unlisted neg deck? And that needs secret review. That's...
I don't know what, I can go back and look at what we did.
I mean, one of the problems here is, as Tom is mentioning here, you've got these agricultural lands. And some of these stormwater, coming off these ag properties are getting dumped on all kind of county roads and everything else and causing all kinds of flooding problems. Like in Huntington, which we purchased, have the actual ag lands in there. And it's causing flooding all over the place. So that's something that the county should really actively consider in terms of management of ag lands when they purchase farmland development rights.
Right. I mean, that is part of the AEM management plan, to look at stormwater issues and drainage, etc., as part of the management plan.
But they didn't include that. That was actively...
Yeah.
They don't, Gergela basically tried, if I remember correctly, it was Joe was trying to, not naming names, but basically the farmland community was trying to avoid having further regulation of what they do, even though a lot of that water is going into some polluted groundwater, et cetera, when it's laden with
but
pesticides.
this is the county plan for acquisition and development rights, am I correct?
Correct.
So the county has the right to consider that before purchasing development rights.
But they may have, but Chapter 8 outlines how we proceed in acquiring those properties. They go before the Farmland Committee to be approved. Those things can be brought up at the Farmland Committee. But in this case, we've already moved along to, we're in contract. We can't change, the wording of the contract at this point to add in whatever other concerns
that's for
you have.
acquisition of specific parcels.
Right, and that's what this is.
No. We're talking about getting beyond this, not this particular parcel. Is how do you amend, Chapter 8 to take these things into consideration in the future when the county goes into acquiring these things? And maybe somebody should be asked to show up to the CEQ, give an overview of what Chapter 8 involves, and the council can make recommendations how it could be amended in order to, mitigate environmental impacts further.
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to hold anything up. This is the established procedures and set forth the way it is now. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're second guessing everything.
Yeah.
Too bad we couldn't just bulldoze the whole island and start
No,
over
no,
again.
I want to reword that. We're not getting to the point where we're trying to second guess. We're trying to get to the point where we can actually have a moment to examine these considerations.
No, right.
We keep hearing about them, done before us, and carried forward, and we're like, wait. So Chapter 8 would be a great
Right,
change
that's a
to
start.
affect how it's done before.
In other words,
That's-
before we purchase
that's the
development
point.
rights, we ask the farmer, assume, well, it's farmland preservation is drinking water. If it's coming out of that program, we ask the farmer to remediate and trap his stormwater on premises. That's what we would be doing.
But you would have to do that.
That would be prior to, or part of the contract process.
Prior to putting together an appraisal steps resolution.
Sure.
In other words, when the county is looking at farmland development, let's say Carahan drops a bill saying we want to purchase the farmland development rights on a potential property. Okay. In that potential situation, as Tom is saying, one of the criteria should be if this place is throwing off a lot of runoff and polluting other properties, etc., that's a criteria that we look at. It may impact the appraisal. It may impact the numbers.
But it's impacting the numbers the rest of us have to pay afterwards.
I mean, Loretta, we're faced with a nitrogen crisis on the island. Tom's very correct about
I don't
that.
disagree with you. I just understand that there is our farmland committee that evaluates and takes in all these kinds of issues on a monthly basis. They discuss it. They go back and forth about these things. If you wish to bring your thoughts to the farmland committee in some way, shape, or form, that'd be fine.
Well, Loretta, I have a question here. Does the farmland committee consider stormwater runoff?
Yes, as far as an AEM plan, part of that plan considers stormwater runoff issues and drainage issues, etc., on specific parcels. And that's what we had recommended to be considered when we were updating Chapter 8. The Farmland Committee, in their, decision-making, decided that that was not what they wanted to put forward as an amendment to Chapter 8.
Oh, okay, so they decided to leave it out.
Correct.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's not pertinent, it shouldn't be considered.
But it's
That's
their
not
policy.
part of the consideration that's in Chapter 8 for
Their
the
guidelines, in other
review
words?
of properties to be considered in, for
Well,
the acquisition
So
of
how
development
does
rights.
the council's concern get considered?
If
into
you
that?
wish to present your concerns in some
We
form
write a
or
letter
fashion,
saying Chapter 8
correct,
should
you
be
can
changed,
send
that this
it
should be a
to
criteria.
the
So if we could get a
farmland
presentation on Chapter 8 and exactly what it involves.
That'd be great. So these concerns in Chapter 8 that are listed and that are considered before a property is purchased, who enforces them after the property is purchased?
What considerations are we talking about?
Any of them.
Farmland development?
Farmland development rights are
Let's-
reviewed
The
by
planning
the planning
department, among
department.
others.
If there's no enforcement, then I don't
There is
understand.
enforcement. They inspect the properties every year.
They do.
Yeah, I represent
Then-
a couple properties.
Then
like
by
that.
all means, we should meet with this farmland committee.
Well, I'd like to see an overview of Chapter 8,
Yes,
just to ask, see what's covered and what isn't.
right, and I think we should go talk to these people.
Or they should I'm wondering,
Wait. Behind the barn? In public or?
I think if there's actually enforcement,
They're in lots
There
of
is
bars.
every year.
there is actually enforcement, then Tom's
But
absolutely
the
right. We should be
enforcement is
looking.
the
Yeah.
use.
See if they're
Can I
if they're doing
say-
farming.
The
Right.
enforcement is just the use of the property and if there's any violations with regard to the use. One, however, violation that we are dealing with right now is a property in East Hampton where the town of East Hampton actually created a recharge basin on a farm, PDR, county farm PDR land. We are now in negotiations with the owner and the town of East Hampton to remedy the situation. They've taken viable farm soils out of the property. And this is a big issue that the Farmland Committee has been dealing with. So
one is
there
it?
are times where these issues come before the Farmland Committee, and, discussions are made as to how to remedy that. One of the remedies that we recommended was to put a swale into the area and allowing the farmer to continue to farm the entire property and not lose that ability on that portion of the property. So at times those things are considered. Are they considered on every property? Not necessarily. We don't go out and look at farms in that capacity from an environmental perspective unless it gets to a certain threshold where there are ramifications that come into play.
But to the point
again,
of enforcement, there are some things which we wouldn't be asking the farm board if we would do this right. The people that already do stormwater management and already have MS4s, there's already a whole regulatory structure for that. And I think we would do best to just have that parcel become one of the other agents that has to act a certain way because it's flowing into that town or the county. Right. And then the Bureau just does the land use part, which is what they do well.
Basically, looking at this as a contract attorney who's dealt with this issue a little bit, it would have to be done much earlier. It would have to be done as part of the condition of the contract.
Yeah.
Okay, and basically, and then look, I'm just saying how it lays out.
Because that, and as Lloyd points out, you can't do an appraisal until you understand. Whoa, I'm going to have to terrace this thing. You just change what I can do. Good, that's what we're trying to do.
One of the things too, not only on presentation on Chapter 8, I'd like to see what the planning department's recommendations were for AEM that didn't get adopted by the board, but what was presented to them.
Okay, we can try to put.
I mean, you guys made a recommendation that they be incorporated, and the board decided not to.
We had iterations and draft copies of the changes that we were proposing in Chapter 8. We then would come to the committee, ask them to review it, and give us their feedback, and things were added and subtracted. So it was an iterative process.
But the planning department is environmentally minded, and you guys made recommendations because you thought they made sense from mitigating impact on the environment, so I'd like to know what those were. Not just see what the board adopted, but what was proposed to the board.
Well, in that instance, there were a lot of things proposed. I don't know if we can, recreate that whole iterative process, but we can zero in on that one.
Yeah, right. I mean, some of the things that are agriculture. I mean, I don't think this committee gets involved in that, but I think the CEQ's interested in mitigating environmental problems associated with farmland. I mean, there's a whole multitude of these flooding problems that are occurring on Long Island. It seems like nowadays with all these storms are getting worse, and how they might be mitigated would make sense.
I think just to look at the other side of it and the issues that were presented to us, the Farm Bureau as well as others on the committee indicated to us that it would impede farmers possibly from even selling their farm to the county if in fact we impose more restrictions and more restrictions on them. So it's a balancing act that we try to, work forward. We don't want to, do this in detriment to the program to protect further farms, but we do want to see some kind of environmental considerations be taken into consideration.
Well, there might be other ways to do it besides just going to a committee.
Right, well, that can be negotiated, that could be,
Yeah, I mean, there might be different ways
conditions
to
could be set up to
accomplish
work it, make it happen.
I gotta tell you, a lot of farmers will not enter the program if there's too much. They want the money, bluntly. They will not enter the program if
But it
there's
can be
too much.
negotiated.
To flip around
that's
and
negotiable.
put that other perspective on the table, there's a due diligence that's appropriate and expected on behalf of the buyer. Because we want to make it easier for the farmer to sell, but we better make sure that the buyer is being treated fairly in that they're taking on a parcel which might have known issues with regard to runoff, and they should understand that even if it's not subject to regs now, you might get a headache in the future. That's part of what they should know coming in.
But
Well,
understand
workable
It's
that,
not a topic that should be put under
I agree.
the rug.
No,
On behalf of either the
So it
buyer
needs to
or
be
the seller.
explored.
Yeah,
because
it's
it is a problem.
explored, and anything is can be negotiated. The ways to make all kinds of things happen.
understand that
As long
the
as it's
underlying
transparent.
fee
Exactly.
title to the property is a private owner. And those types of issues would have to be addressed by the owner.
Well, it's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. I mean,
But that's the way it's set up.
Just
now.
we can work to get a presentation
yeah,
to the CEQ.
I think that's important.
And
Yeah, and explore what the ramifications are and a whole bunch of
So we have an
different things.
better understanding. I know I need a better understanding.
So we can restore our habitat.
All right, do I have a recommendation?
Please, throw us a life ring.
All right,
I'll second.
second. All those in favor? Disapprove? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Passed.
You would hear the bonds. Getting along.
Mary Ann, we're torturing everyone today.
I know.
He's just
All
the
right,
next
so the next thing on the agenda.
Yeah, the beautiful
Rick
stuff.
Davies, okay, presentation, alternative concept restoration plan, Mud Creek.
Is he ordering pizza or something?
Okay.
Well, great.
Away.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to come out to this beautiful place today. This is wonderful. I really enjoy this. But anyway, we were first talked about this project, which is the Mud Creek Watershed Aquatic Restoration Feasibility Study 3 years ago when we came to this group and described what we thought at that time was the request for proposals that we were going to issue for the project. We requested input on it, and we did get input, and we took pains to design that RFP such that it would be adequate in doing due diligence with respect to whatever secret requirements we would need to address as a result of implementing a project that will result from the work that we're doing. Suffice it to say that we went through the RFP process. The consultant team led by Land Use Ecological Services Incorporated from Medford was selected. Dr. William Bowman is here today, who will give a presentation on what we've done. Kelly Risotto works for Land Use also, and I would like to say from the beginning of this project, Nick Gibbons has been involved with it. He's a partner in this project. Richard Martin has been involved with looking at the site in detail with respect to the structures. Susan Filipowicz in our office is spearheading a lot of the work. Loretta Fisher was involved from the project in the beginning 10 years ago.
Wow.
So persevering, we were successful in getting quite a bit of money to do this project from a county perspective. We are doing a lot of intensive work, which we'll describe in a minute. The project began in October of 2012. We are about midway through it. We are at the point now where we're going out to the governments and the public. Counting today, we've been to 5 meetings in the last 2 weeks, including 2 with the town of Brookhaven. We will have a public meeting on the project, widely advertised, sponsored by Legislator Calarco and Patchard, probably on June 9th or June 10th in the evening to get the public's response. We are about a year away from actually having a completed shovel-ready project with all permits in hand. But we'll let Will describe how we have progressed to this point. And I will end my little introduction here by saying we will be back to this group. And we will be back with a project that you will be able to consider. And when it's completed, and that will be probably over the next 6 to 8 months or so.
So we don't necessarily have to, there's no decisions,
that's a good
no
point.
guidance
Good point.
points.
No, this is just informational. This is just information. You can rest easy. Sit back, enjoy an old duck farm. The only thing I would say is that this duck farm it's on a 45-acre site. To me, when we go in there, and a lot of people haven't seen it, they turned the key, walked away from it. So and it's had 30 years of change. And maybe some of the pictures will show that to you.
What was the name of the duck farm?
Gallo Duck Farm.
Okay.
Gallo Duck Farm in operation since the 1920s, went out in the mid-1980s. Up to one point, their permit said they grew 250,000 ducks there per year.
Wow.
The owner winks at you and says, more like 350.
So this is also at the headwaters of the last trout stream on Long Island?
Yes,
Wow.
we'll discuss this, and we know headwaters are in the news lately, as of yesterday with St. Palms Creek. We are talking about the headwaters of one of the 38 streams in Great South Bay that, you know, are important to that particular water body.
Thank you, DeWitt. Good afternoon. It's great to have the opportunity to update the CEQ on our progress with this project so far. In addition to land use, our project partners are H2M. They're handling all the civil engineering. And we have some stream and fisheries restoration specialists as project partners. Interflu, they're based in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, this is an example of the maps. Is this okay for people to see?
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it. Yeah.
All right. So this is just to orient everyone on the former Gallo Duck Farm. This is a 45-acre site highlighted in yellow. The duck farm sat astride of the east branch of the Mud Creek, which had its headwaters up to the northeast. Up in this area, you can see the floodplains of the east branch of Mud Creek kind of shaded in this green. Also to orient you, all the light blue parcels shaded, those are owned by Suffolk County, and there's a little bit of town of Brookhaven land highlighted in red up here. So the east branch of Mud Creek drains to the southwest. It emerges out of the end of a pipe at the southwest end, downstream end of the duck farm property, keeps on going to the southwest where it bumps into Montauk Highway running here. The east branch then meets up with the west branch of Mud Creek. The west branch starts up here, its headwaters are near County Route 101, drains directly south to the confluence of the east and west branches where they flow in a single pipe under Montauk Highway, then under the Long Island Railroad easement, into Robinson Pond, and then out into Patchogue Bay. So again, I mentioned Montauk Highway, which is an important reference point. There's another road that runs through the middle of the site. It's like Gazzola Drive that goes right here, bisecting the former duck farm into two sections. So the purpose of this project is to develop a plan of action for improving the wetland, stream, and upland habitats that were degraded by the former duck farming activities. And at the end, we're looking to have a shovel-ready project with final construction drawings and specifications, construction costs, and permits in hand. The duck farm, like this room, had a lot of ducks on it, DeWitt was saying that they produced 250 to 300,000 ducks annually. They may have had 70,000 ducks on the property at one time. So a lot of animals, in the immediately adjacent to a freshwater tributary. Some of the impacts of the duck farming are quite clear even from an aerial photo. This is part of Mud Creek. This is kind of moving upstream. This is moving downstream. You can see these earthen dams that were constructed at various points. And they essentially destroyed the stream habitat, changing the streams into shallow ponds.
Well, if I could, maybe you can answer this as you go along, or not at all perhaps. You talked about having a shovel-ready project at the end as an objective. Is it part of your approach to put up this shovel-ready to build specs, so that you could do the first 20%, and you could do half? If you can't get all the money,
right?
Are you designing so that you would sort of do the water first and do the something next?
There are probably, if you're at that, well, with permitting, we want to get everything approved, and we want to have all the final design done.
Right.
But there would be logical breakpoints that would emerge, and we'll kind of get into that a bit. Now, another really fascinating aspect of the east of Mud Creek is that an important objective of the project is to expand brook trout habitat. There is a population, a very hardy population of brook trout that is found in the lower reaches of the East Branch, in the West Branch, and then extends down into the headwaters of Robinson Pond.
How big are they?
From the sampling that's been done, they've definitely taken 8-inch trout out of there. Some of the recent sampling, they found things about that big.
Yeah, because the Nisqually River in its upper reaches has a heritage stream also, but the fish are only about that large. It's just not that sufficient to food supply nor depth of water to really support it. So 8 inches is pretty big.
And then another
That's Tom's lunch.
Another neat thing is that this is the East Branch population is a heritage strain of brook trout. There's no record of it having ever been stocked. So one of the DEC's reports in 2001 said it was the only population on Long Island that has not had any stocking within its. Well, you can take that.
Wrong.
Okay, well that was great.
Later on, a couple years later, he said the same thing about another body of water.
Okay, that was great. that was great. Well, take that up. Well, it is certainly a unique population.
He's wrong that it was unique, or he's wrong that it's the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
That was a more question. You can't say yeah.
Okay, 3 years later, 3 years after 2001. Okay, he said the same thing about the Nisqually River upper reaches. That there was a heritage program in there.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, this is a heritage strain. There's no record of it having been stocked, and there have been some genetic testings that confirm that this population is it doesn't have the same genetic signature as Connecticut or something. So you just have a small but hardy and persistent population of brook trout that have been managed to survive throughout the decades of degradation in the East Branch. Now, we'll get into site-specific objectives for the project, later in the presentation. But it's also hoped that this project can serve as a model for future, stream restoration and future duck farm restoration projects in Suffolk County. As we know, the streams on Long Island South Shore, and throughout Long Island, have been heavily impacted through damming and also other alterations. So this is a postcard from 1902 of the Patchogue area, showing the lace and carpet mills situated at the south end of Great Patchogue Lake, which is obviously an impounded part of the Great Patchogue River. Impoundment of streams for producing hydropower, is clearly evident. Just look in this aerial from the Patchogue area. You see Dunton Lake, which is an impounded part of Hedges Creek. You can see Robinson Pond in Mud Creek. There's little impoundments on the duck farm, on the Gallo Duck Farm property. There's Swan Lake and Swan River, Great Patchogue Lake and Canaan Lake in Patchogue River, and West Lake in Tut Hills Creek. So, and any drive along Montauk Highway and South Country Road and looking at all the mill ponds and grist mill ponds, we extensively changed our groundwater stream habitats into shallow ponds, shallow lakes.
Are there still swans on Swan Lake?
I bet there are. I bet there are. Other things, other impacts to Suffolk County and Long Island streams. We extensively channelized, straightened, excavated out our streams to improve drainage, and to reduce mosquito habitat. So this is a photo that DeWitt sent to me from the Suffolk County Planning's archives, showing a stream that has been very clearly manipulated. Obviously the adjacent vegetation has been destroyed, but this stream looks too wide. So it looks like the channel has been widened out. This kind of trapezoidal form that you see of the bank. All these things were done so that streams conveyed water better and faster. But it's a significant departure from the meandering stream channels that you'd expect to find naturally in our floodplain, in our floodplains. So this project a goal is to restore a natural meandering groundwater stream. And again, and so we've done an extensive amount of field work to support this endeavor. All the field work was completed in 2013. We did a topographic survey of the stream and floodplain, also the uplands as well. We inventoried all of the stream impoundments and culverts, not just on the 45 acres, but down all the way downstream to Robinson's Pond and up to the headwaters of both the East and West Branch. Obviously these are systems, so we can't just look at our particular project site. We took sediment cores in the streams and wetlands. We measured stream velocities and discharge volumes. We installed long-term water level loggers in the East and West Branch in order to inform modeling of the stream, and those loggers are still out there collecting data now. We installed stream temperature loggers. So again, we have 5 water temperature loggers out there collecting data every 15 minutes, and to get an idea of the long-term thermal regime in the streams. We collected some dissolved oxygen measurements. We conducted a fish survey with the NYSDEC. We sampled stream macroinvertebrates. We located all the subsurface cesspools and dry wells associated with the old duck buildings. We inventoried all the structures and debris, abandoned equipment. We did subsurface soil testing in the located cesspools. We did an asbestos survey. There were random drums and paint cans and things like that. Those were tested to see if they were hazardous materials. We mapped all of the ecological community types. We surveyed all trees greater than 4 inches in diameter in order to figure out which trees we could incorporate into our future restoration plans. We did a botanical inventory. We mapped the significant stands of invasive plants. We delineated the wetlands, and again we mapped all of the abundant debris on the site. So that led us to be able to identify, the critical environmental impacts at the site. Probably first and foremost, as I mentioned a few slides ago, there are a number of earthen berms. You can see this aerial photo highlights 3 of them. One there, and then one there. And upstream of these earthen berms, there are shallow, nutrient-rich, stagnant, eutrophic ponds, such as shown in this picture right here. This pond is located right there. This is a picture of the downstream end of this berm right here. You can see it's not a large impoundment. It's only about 5 feet or so in height, and it has 2 pipes that drain this pond right here. Those berms obviously direct the stream and create shallow ponds, they also impound lots of sediments. So if you go in these ponds, you have several feet of organic matter, both perhaps old duck farm legacy sediments, and then also biological production of all the algae and aquatic vegetation that you have in this in these ponds. Now, these ponds are a real problem for one of our primary objectives, the brook trout. Because these ponds are open and sunlit and receive direct, have the sun beating down on them in the summer, the waters get quite warm, and brook trout need cold water. So the water that's emerging out of the downstream end of these impoundments is too warm for brook trout. So you have kind of a thermal in addition to this pond not being good habitat for brook trout because of low dissolved oxygen and all the accumulated organic sediments, the water, and because of the warm water, that warm water also flows downstream, degrading habitat downstream for brook trout.
Also, I've seen the green scum on the eutrophic pond photo. Obviously, if you've got an impoundment and you've got algal blooms growing, when they break away, they're going to do stuff downstream also.
Yes, yeah, you get...
Are they going to get washed out? I mean, is the stream flow large enough to wash it out, or does it sort of stagnate in pools even downstream?
I'm sure you get a dissolved organic fraction and nutrients that are exported downstream from these.
The water turns to schmutz.
Yeah.
That's technical.
So that's another major environmental impact is the significant extent of invasive plants. On the former duck feedlots, those wide open pens that the ducks were located in, those are mostly dominated now by invasive mugwort. There's about 10 acres of mugwort on the site. The former duck swim waters and the disturbed waterways are all ringed by Phragmites, totaling about 5 acres.
I'll ask one more question, then shut up. Maybe. No promises. The mugwort, okay. It's basically sitting on top of the duck manure areas. Duck manure is relatively acidic? Why is it just that particular plant over there?
Mugwort is... It's a supremely good competitor in disturbed areas. Second, it produces chemicals that actually suppress other plants. So you get these really dense monospecific or monocultural stands of mugwort without anything else in them. And yes, actually that leads me right into the next bullet point. So, in both the mugwort stands and the Phragmites stands, despite the fact that, as DeWitt mentioned, this duck farm has been fallow for 30 years, there's very little in the way of native vegetation recruiting into these mugwort fields or the Phragmites areas. So it's not like we see young oak trees in there that look like they might eventually, where it might look like the field is going to eventually give way to an oak forest. They look arrested.
So how deep is the sediment from the duck farms?
Good. So in the impounded ponds, it's on average about 2 feet. In some places it's more. Some places 2.5 to 3. Some places it's less.
So if you were to dig out that area, would you then have a soil type that would be advantageous for more?
Yes, underlying those sediments is native sands.
Right.
So if you dug down, you could get to that.
So you could put more native species.
We're getting there.
Okay, cool.
We'll get there.
There's also some stormwater impacts. This is a photo of Gazzola Drive looking, we're on the south side of the property. You can see this low spot in the road. That's where the East Branch crosses under Gazzola Drive. About 12 acres of Gazzola Drive drain into a couple of catch basins that are located right down at the low point. Also, so that about 12 acres of stormwater gets into the East Branch, right there, and then about 45 acres of Montauk Highway, comprised of extending to the east of the East Branch. There's commercial properties here. There's also some residential neighborhoods. So this water goes south on Gazzola, then west downhill, and discharges directly into Mud Creek, where the creek passes under Montauk Highway. Now we have all the duck buildings. So there's 11 abandoned duck buildings. You can see some photos of, that's one right there. Another one. About 8 of these have asbestos-containing materials in them. We located 4 out-of-service cesspools. There's multiple old utility poles, scattered throughout the site. There's so much debris around. There's abandoned equipment, there's old fences, there's everything. You can see on this aerial photo, it's hard to make out, but there's little kind of pinkish crosses scattered throughout the site. Those all correlate with some type of debris that was found. Maybe something large, like an abandoned loader, or a pickup truck, or a large pile of old garbage. It might be just a random fence post. But we identified approximately 400 different debris features that would need to come out.
Any of them chemical?
Asbestos.
Well, it's like asbestos.
Yeah.
I mean,
No hazardous materials were
No hazard.
were found. Just the asbestos, which would obviously be a consideration in the building demo. So, where we're at in the project right now is we've developed a concept plan for restoration of the site. So the field investigations have culminated in us identifying the critical environmental impacts, and now we have a concept plan of potential restoration actions that might be implemented to get the site moving on a better ecological path. And the concept plans are visual renderings that allow planning and parks and all the other stakeholder groups that we're going out to discuss, and at the end of this kind of preliminary vetting stage, planning and parks are going to direct us to proceed with development of construction plans that are based on these concept plans. So for all of the areas dominated by invasive plants or having some type of degraded ecological habitat like those shallow ponds, we proposed both some type of a restoration action and a target ecological community that we're hoping to be able to switch one perhaps adverse ecological condition like the Phragmites into something positive like a forested wetland. So these concept plans provide a visual representation of that. Each of these kind of shading symbols correspond to some type of restoration action or a target ecological community. And so, in perhaps one of the most important one, in those, I'll just go through these very briefly, and then I'll show you some kind of more details of some of the important, or some of the most important restoration actions. Throughout the 5 acres of Phragmites marsh in the old floodplain, we'd be proposing to create a forested wetland with a groundwater stream running through it. That's shown by this mottled light and dark green that kind of runs through the center part of the site. You can see the blue meandering stream channel. one of the difficult things with making a concept plan when you're trying to return everything to native vegetation is that you want to make everything green. So there's some difficulty in piecing out these things. But this middle zone is 5 acres of forested wetland.
Where's
with
the horse therapy going to go?
There's places for it.
And that building would make a nice horse stable.
Assuming Larry doesn't object to the horse manure, we don't have too many horses, so we have to eat them.
Another kind of important target ecological community is shown in this mottled gray. Those are the former duck feedlots. Those are the upland mugwort stands. There we'd be shooting to transition that over time into a mature oak forest. So something like you would see here to the both upstream and downstream of Mud Creek in the upland areas. Obviously, this photo is of a mature oak forest, so oak forest restoration would involve planting of small trees. But you can see a picture of what the eventual target would be.
With the idea that the shade would eventually cut down on the mugwort?
Yeah, yes, right. So both invasive plants, most of our most problematic invasive plants at this site, both the Phragmites and the mugwort, don't do well with shade. So over the long term, we want to get this site as shady as possible. That also feeds into the brook trout issue because we want that stream to be as cold as possible.
Let me ask you a really stupid question. If you're going to be digging out the ponds and reestablishing channels and things like that, it's not as easy as people think. Question, were you involved with the Yaphank Lake?
No.
Okay, in which case I can speak freely. That was a dredging project of a rather large area, and it didn't go all that well. The contractor didn't listen to a lot of the advice that he was given and things like that. If you do this, you're going to be having siltation coming out of the streams and out of the ponds, and it has a tendency to choke off the fish quite nicely. That's what happened at Yaphank. Unless you have major remediation, such as silt screens and things like that, and again, this is way forward. Just be aware you've got to do this very, very carefully to avoid killing the population you're trying to save. And we have had the disasters around here to show you the way to do it.
Yeah,
Selected to do it.
I think too, one of the reasons that we partnered with Interfluve is that they have extensive experience all over the country with stream restorations and environmental protection while the work is going on, supervising and making sure that degradation does not occur or is minimized as much as
Because
possible.
they knocked on the Carmen when they did the Upper Lake, they knocked off a lot of fish.
And then the other thing, so we are. I grew up on Long Island. To me, when water moves. When water moves, it's usually because of the tides. So this kind of flowing system is something that was, designing a stream system. Something I hadn't done. I've worked on many tidal wetland restorations, but that's why we did partner with Interfluve from Madison, Wisconsin. Actually, we're dealing with their Madison, Wisconsin folks, but they're based in Oregon, and so they do large river and stream restorations throughout the country.
I used to build dams on this kind of stuff.
But just to kind of get to, it's a good point to jump in. So we're looking to get a stream restoration shortly after construction should look something like this. Now this was a stream restoration in Massachusetts about 2 to 3 years after construction. So you see this created stream channel, this woody debris placed on purpose to provide habitat complexity. You see these wetland sedges and grasses in the floodplain. That's definitely an improvement over what we have now, here. But you're right, that is a lot of excavation. So in this case, it would be thought to route the stream around, the stream water around the site during excavation while the floodplain is being taken out. So you're kind of working in the dry, and then
Piping, basically. Piping.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So and then for the water that gets routed, and then when you and then having turbidity controls, silt screens of the curtains of the appropriate mesh size to keep the right, and turbidity socks at the end of pipes and things like that. But we can. The thought here would be to not work in the wet, to be able to.
They did that on the Peconic River restoration a while back when some of the bottom sediments around here were taken out. They divert with piping basically. They took out the radioactive sediments.
This creek is dammed, right? Montauk Island?
Pardon?
It's dammed at Montauk Island?
No, it's it's dammed at Robinson's Pond. It's dammed at South Country Road.
How does that affect the trout and?
The trout reside, it seems like, between. It's seasonal. So in cold water months, they might kind of move into. We think they move into Robinson's Pond. During the summertime, they probably converge and just hang out in some very cold parts of the stream, located in a narrow stretch between the upper part of Robinson's Pond and the very lower east and west branch. So they're definitely spatially restricted. They're definitely trapped between Robinson's Pond and some part in both east and west branch.
When you open up those ponds, there's going to be an awful lot of prime land for invasive plants to jump back in again. So is that the same idea? You don't really care if invasive plants come in because you're going to be planting the trees? You're just going to let it?
No. So after and in this floodplain, to get from our existing Phragmites marsh to this immediately after construction, and then to this, which is a photo of a red maple hardwood swamp from the west branch, over time. We need to get rid of the Phragmites, get rid of the organic sediments in there, plant with trees, but then the trees will provide the long-term shade to help keep Phragmites from becoming dominant again. But in that intermediate time, until the trees get taller than the Phragmites and close canopy, there is going to have to be maintenance of to keep the Phragmites from reestablishing, and that will certainly involve our herbicides.
There's PNC in there that can wick it all.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of the control of the Phragmites and the mugwort would have to be kind of a coupled chemical, herbicide and mechanical means. So you'd herbicide, you'd excavate out the material, the organic matter and the rhizomes, and then as plants are, then you have very selective herbicides when you're for Phragmites or mugwort that are starting to come back up with the plants that you've put in the ground.
What's the projected time period for that? How many years is that, more or less?
Of herbicide application, you're probably, some of the jobs I've worked on, like the Gerritsen Marsh restoration in Brooklyn, that they were doing Phragmites control for about 3 to 4 years. Before they originally, so that would be pretty good. But then it's like your garden. You can't just, even if you get to the point where there's no Phragmites, this habitat here, until it gets tree cover, is still really primed for Phragmites. It's open, it's sunlit, the hydrologic regime is correct. There's still probably a lot of nutrients around from the old duck farming activities, so it is something that requires periodic maintenance.
Maybe you can get Krista to do a covered wrap on the area.
Realistically, if you're going to be doing maintenance on this, I mean, you've got your initial costs coming up. You're clearly going to have to do maintenance on this.
Yep.
In terms of cost factor, percentage-wise, that's all I'm looking at. Let's say it costs $1 million to do this. How long do you think you're going to have to do or take to continue the maintenance, and what do you think the cost factor would be
Well,
compared to that $1 million?
In the initial construction, you would require that the contractor maintain it for something like 2 growing seasons. So you get your first few seasons of maintenance, coupled with the initial construction.
Capital costs up front.
Yeah, and so when we put together our preliminary costs at this stage, and then the final construction costs, that will include, say for planting the floodplain area, that's not just planting and then walking away. That's planting and maintenance for that 2-year period. That's how we ask the contractors to provide the number.
How much will this cost? Because I don't know how much longer I can stay.
We're looking at $4 to $5 million for the wetland restoration, the upland restoration, the removal of the organic sediments off-site, and the demolition and removal of all the buildings, and stormwater and culvert improvements. So that we're... 40, 45.
And what's the cost?
$4 to $5 million.
And what will the maintenance budget be?
Oh, I'd have to. I didn't tease it out. We will have that itemized. In our preliminary numbers, I just asked for the. When I was trying to get some rough estimates from contractors, I just asked them to, planting and maintenance for planting and guarantee for 2 years. So
how many? Obviously you don't have to maintain the entire property, but how many acres are going to need active maintenance?
Let's see. It's got 5 acres for the Phragmites, 10. You're probably looking at about 20.
It could be worse, but that's a lot to maintain. Holy mackerel.
Yep. No, it's it's feasible. Like the tricky thing is that these areas, because it's fresh water, Phragmites will try to come back. So if you do a salt marsh restoration, you have a lot less kind of the Phragmites don't try to come back as strenuously. So I worked on a 2 20-plus acre salt marsh restorations, one in Jamaica Bay and then one in Brooklyn, and that they were able to get a good hold of their Phragmites within 3 to 4 years time. This site might be a bit more challenging because freshwater versus tidal. But again, in this case, over the long term, you want the trees to do that.
I'm visualizing these oak seedlings over 20 acres. So you have to go around them to maintain the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that just adds more time and more complexity to the issue of maintenance.
Yeah. So if your maintenance is herbicide application and mugwort, then in the very beginning you have a huge amount of biomass to apply herbicides to. So it takes a lot of time. But then over time, the invasive biomass declines, but it's spread within all this vegetation that you value. So it still takes a good bit of time, that maintenance, to go and find out and target and selectively apply herbicides to these more isolated individuals.
I'm sorry, I don't know what kind of herbicide you would use, but mugwort is very sensitive to Roundup, so you can use like really low concentrations of that wouldn't affect an oak tree.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so the herbicides will likely be, glyphosate, and then, a recent study or report by some of the Cornell Cooperative Extension folks found that this combination of herbicide application and mechanical grubbing or tilling with both either Roundup or Casseron was really successful with mugwort.
Roundup 365 now.
Pardon?
Roundup 365 works every day.
Does this plan take into account what was done for the Peconic River restoration and what experiences Brookhaven will have?
No, not specifically.
So in other words, you never touched base with them to find out what they did and what worked and what didn't work?
No, we've kind of going on our own, project experience when we reach out. The DEC was obviously a regulatory authority for that.
It's quite a different thing.
Yeah.
It's quite a different.
Yeah, but you know something, you can use the application forms, DEC. No, I'm serious. This kind of work, when you're having diversions, was accounted for in the Peconic River thing. And basically it's copying the paperwork. It was successful with DEC a couple of years ago. Used the same paperwork, basically.
Well,
And, you know, you cut your work in half.
I was involved in that project too from parks. The driver on that project was certainly a lot different than what's going on here. It's a cold water system, that's a warm water system. This is a far smaller scale in terms of linear footage of trail,
It wasn't radioactive, I hope.
The driver here is really what physical sediments and topography and hydrology. That wasn't a restoration of hydrology.
So the forms aren't directly transferable.
And then our partner Interflow, they've worked on hundreds of stream and river projects before, so that's their expertise will go into the construction design for how the best way to divert the stream will be. Just kind of. Again, our target stream would be, it's not going to be a huge stream. At the headwaters, it's probably on the order of, 4 feet across. At the downstream end of the duck farm, we're more looking like, 12 feet across. It might be between 1 and 3 feet in depth. We would add, selectively add woody debris to, increase, habitat complexity. It would meander, and then we put dense tree plantings so that over time it could develop into this forested wetland. And across the floodplain, we would dig out small ponded areas so that there might be a vernal pond within the floodplain that might provide habitat for amphibians. We would excavate little, like when we do the excavation, you're going to see groundwater seeps that emerge on the exposed floodplain. Those seeps, we can make side channels into the main channel. This is another conceptual rendering, showing not only our target kind of dense foliage, the meandering stream, but also some of these educational and recreational amenities, elevated boardwalks and interpretive signs.
Is that part of your design?
Yes.
The boardwalk?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to our kind of plan view, we also show, we show the wetland restoration area. We show the oak forest restoration area, which I can talk more about. But then we also show 1.25 miles of nature trail with kind of elevated boardwalks through the wetland area, something like this. This photo from Blydenburg Park. Provide a parking area, something on the order of 10 cars, 2 buses. Interpretive kiosk right near the parking area, plus interpretive signs throughout the nature trail. This dashed black line, those are the old building footprints. Obviously, those all need to come out. And also, we should kind of show on the plan view. Now, I've talked about the Phragmites and the mugwort and how dense and ecologically bad they are. But there are some redeeming ecological features of the property. There's a couple acres of nice eastern red cedar stands. There's several acres of red maple willow forest along the edge of the floodplain. So those areas of high quality native vegetation would be fenced off and incorporated into the plan.
Are there any white cedars in there?
No.
Or white oak?
White oak. There's certainly white oaks. Yeah.
Triple E. I'm thinking Triple E right now.
Huh?
The one thing I worry about with all of this is creating a habitat for Triple E.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because Triple E sometimes will be around streams, and stream velocity doesn't have much to do with the existence or I don't remember the right word, it's been so long a day. But basically, the bugs that contain triple E like to hang out in places like this. What it boils down to. They like Atlantic white sweet cedar swamps, but they do have a smaller preference towards other types of, I don't remember, oaks or maples or something like that. I don't remember.
And
so, just something to be worried about.
well, the wetland, the total wetland area won't change, shouldn't change much. You know, we have, so our, we have those ponds and the Phragmites marshes. We're looking to get those into a forested wetland, but we're not, won't be wetland area. Total wetland area shouldn't increase. I don't know about the habitat specificities for the triple E mosquitoes, but I'm sure there's mosquitoes there now.
Big ones.
Will you expect any other kinds of regulatory, pressures or difficult hurdles?
We had a preliminary meeting with the DEC, and they were really supportive. We're obviously addressing lots of environmental bads. We're trying to keep the things that are environmentally good, like the red cedar stands, and for the other things, we're just kind of cleaning them up a bit. One thing that might be a challenge, or just something that remains to figure out how we're going to determine how it's going to be solved, is the sediments. Those have to be disposed of somewhere, and we have to do more testing. The Army Corps did some preliminary testing of the sediments in the previous iteration of this project, and having looked at some of those results, the sediments have enough contaminants that we wouldn't be able to reuse them on site like as mulch, but they are not so contaminated that they would not be able to go to a landfill. So we from what we think, these sediments might have to go to the landfill.
You can't contain on site someplace?
Well, there is this old sump right here. So in the 70s, when there was big pressure put on the duck farm industries to kind of clean up their effluent, they took the water from the swim areas and pumped it into a sump that's right here. So again, depending on the contaminant levels, depending on the directives from planning and parks, if they want to reuse that or put that material on site, depending on the costs, it is feasible that it might be able to be placed in these old basins and then capped with several feet of clean sand.
Layers or something.
Yeah.
Landfill cover.
Yeah, you could put it in there and put 3 feet of clean sand on top of it and plant over top of it, if the material is suitable for that. But at this point, we're assuming that it's going in our budget estimates that it's going off-site, that it's going to a landfill, Brookhaven landfill, as daily cover. And like looking at some of the preliminary levels, there were levels of the DDT and derivatives that would preclude it being used. We couldn't dry out those organics and use them as mulch somewhere. It would preclude the use of a beneficial use determination.
Back up for a second. You just used the very dirty word DDT. How contaminated is this?
Well, that's why I said it's not. It ain't
so bad that it's horrible.
Right. It seems similar to what you find everywhere else on the land. So our state standards are very strict for DDT concentrations, and they do exceed those. So, like I say, we could not. From what I've seen so far, we couldn't dry out this organic matter and use it as mulch, but it is not so contaminated that it could not go to a landfill.
One more plain question. In your better habitats, will you be going through there, getting rid of any kind of woody invasives, like the Orion bittersweet and honeysuckle and stuff? Norway maples?
Yeah, so one like there are stands where young forests that have now are kind of this mix of native like black cherry along with invasive woodies like autumn olive or white mulberry, and in those places we might just try to control the woody non-natives to try to give like the black cherry and the cedar that are there a better chance at closing the canopy on their own.
Well, just to get back for a second to the sediment, is there a way that you could sort of partition the sources of that material, or was the DDT truly just kind of everything?
Well, from the initial sampling, the initial sampling wasn't done with enough specificity to say that. We're now that we have an idea of what cut depth we would go to, we have to go to the DEC and get a sediment sampling plan approved for this.
Compositing is what I would tell you.
Pardon?
Don't go with compositing if you can split it apart and don't commingle.
We probably have to do some compositing for cost reasons. But we
cost you later if you.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes. No. It's. Yeah. So if you composite and then you've taken your composite from like 3 sections, if we do composite, we're do like a local area.
Segmentation is the key.
So that we can.
Some of your materials should be able to stay right where it is.
Yeah. And
just isolate it.
So. We have to do another set of sediment sampling, particularly for this project, which we haven't not done yet because as you know, we have to know what cut depth we're going to. So we have to kind of go through this process before knowing what we'd take out. Now we can make that sediment sampling plan and do that testing. But yeah, no, the DDT and derivatives are ubiquitous. We find them in any freshwater system that has any stormwater impacts or any kind of residential history. There's usually those faint traces of DDT and its metabolites.
But presence doesn't. Until you do a risk-based assessment, just because our lab is the one that finds it for you all the time. The answer is so what? Until you talk about an exposure.
Right. Yeah. Well, but all the criteria are based on just concentrations.
It depends what the ultimate destination point is. Where you can separate that. Under a cap.
The other thing too is that we want the sediments are also have lots of Phragmites rhizomes in them. So that's the other that's the other downside of those sediments. And plus, getting to a we'd like to get through to a shaded, nutrient-poor condition. So the sand with trees over that's the ideal.
We're kind of getting on there.
Okay. Well, I can wrap it up.
Now, I assume this is a summary report that can be available in CEQ's office. This report.
Right. Susan maintains a website. All the technical documents, there's a big binder over there somewhere. And we're in the middle of the technical reports that are being produced here. Everything's going to be up on the site. This is just concept. There'll be a lot more up there. So yes, we'll have that available for people to take a look at if they want.
But that's later.
Later, yeah. I mean, this report, there's a conceptual report. We're going to finalize that at the end of the month. That'll be up on the site.
Okay, so that could be made available, CEQ will note that?
Yep, we can tell you when it's up.
And it's important is that this date, we have these kind of concept plans, and over the next month, Planning and Parks will direct us, to proceed with construction drawings of, all or part of these plans, and then these construction plans and permits that will be back to CEQ to, as we develop construction plans.
I'd like to have Nick say a couple words about this. This is a Parks Department project.
I think Will can get through it maybe through the end of the presentation pretty quickly, but at the end there he'll have a schedule that shows our contract schedule. And most recently we brought the whole concept to DEC just to kind of make sure and confirm that we weren't really missing any big ticket items that we may not have considered. One of the outstanding things is whether or not the suitability of this material, the excavated material for a cover material. So that's kind of an outlier. We don't know for sure yet. What's the volume we're talking about here?
20,000.
Yeah. So it's quite a bit of fill for such a size site will be moved off
Did you
property.
do measurements in that recharge basement, that thing where they used to channel the wastewater for cleaning?
It was done in the past. There were some previous investigations, some phase 1 and phase 2s that were done by planning prior to our contract. They gave those areas a kind of clean bill of health for contaminants and some duct-borne pathogen. So from our perspective, that site doesn't show any other areas of soil staining that we have to go back there.
We haven't analyzed how much of the sediments could go in.
We did do some remediation there. There was some stained soils in the past. We've removed some USTs, a couple of ASTs, I think, if I remember right. They had their own gas pump on site, that kind of thing. We did that a number of years ago. But the point I wanted to make as far as coordinating with DEC, and we're doing a whole bunch of these other, we've been to Parks trustees, we're with you guys today. It was all positive from DEC. Obviously, there's a lot of potential here, and you really can't, you'd be hard pressed to screw it up. It's that, the site is that altered and degraded. So it really, it's all a positive. They are looking forward to getting the permit application from us, and then we'll move forward from there. But there's more detail to provide.
Right, now the question, they're gonna submit a permit application to them. Why don't we make them secret lead agency?
DEC?
Yeah. They say everything's type 2 action anyway. I mean, they still wonder what secret means.
You just need to get that on the record.
But I mean, technically, if they have to review it from an environmental point of view, and you were to touch base with them,
Yeah, we don't need any EIS.
then and you coordinate with them, then you don't need anything more than what they require. You might put out a feeler to them.
Yeah, I'm not going to move forward with DEC as lead agency and cut the county out of the process. Not come back to see.
All right, well, question then.
We'll be back.
If we're talking about all this stuff, what are we looking at? Maybe once you get the plan done, our role becomes environmental, if you will, analyzer in terms of secret. Now, this ain't going to be a type 2.
No, this will be a type 1 neg deck. That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
In which case, seeing as you're playing with duck sludge and fun stuff like that, you're going to have to reach out to the environmental crowd to avoid getting an ambush, to put it very, very bluntly. You've got to get buy-in from those particular stakeholders to avoid a problem and to justify a neg deck, because ordinarily this would be an EIS.
Well, against my better judgment, we're going out to the public, and we're enlisting the comments, and soliciting comments from all of these NGOs and what have you, so they will be part of the process.
Well, in terms of avoiding an
You're
EIS...
trucking sludge through my neighborhood.
No, avoiding an EIS, I like what he says, it'll never happen. But in terms of avoiding an EIS, that's probably the way to go, because otherwise it's $500,000 down the drain for something we know
Well,
is
it depends.
acceptable.
If the plan incorporates environmental parameters and all kinds of things which explain
Yeah, you get
the impact,
4
then technically you come up with an EAF and in a part 3 explain some of the other issues,
Yeah.
and you could possibly get a net
Yes.
deck based, now without an impact statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, an expanded part 3.
That would be the only way really to do it. And basically adopt the master plan as your part 3 right there. And, just wherever you need to explain a few things, it can be done in a couple of pages.
I don't think it's, with the exception of the sediments, which I don't think is going to be an insurmountable issue, although we don't have enough data at the moment to conclude that. I think we're in pretty good shape.
And again, if you do a 3, even if there's an environmental problem with the sediments, seeing as you're probably going to be getting rid of them one way or the other, okay, either capping or removing, the action itself is maybe what we would call a positive declaration because it's an environmental impact, but at the same time you're getting rid of it, that converts it into a negative.
Positive.
So I think it's a positive for everything. So I could see if you do it right, you don't need to do
And this is actually an environmental remediation.
Yeah. You also need EISs with it, but not in this case necessarily if you do it right.
I would hesitate using the word duck sludge.
Sorry?
I don't think that is I don't think that you could characterize the sediments in this system as duck sludge. I know what duck sludge is. And don't forget, you've had 30 plus years.
Of
It's a little different now. Whatever it is.
Yeah, it's.
It's still remnants.
We'll
It's
find the same
Yeah.
sediments in the back of your house in the river. It looks like that stuff. And it's not typical duck sludge, which the Department of Public Works spent many years and millions of dollars dredging from tidal creeks. They don't look the same.
Too bad they sold
They
the
don't
bread.
smell the
They slide in
same.
there and
I'm
put it
using
in
it in a
the
colloquial way. Whatever stuff is
come
on
up
there,
with
whatever
another
schmutz is
word.
on there, okay?
Silty sediments.
Schmutz.
Silty sediments. Organically rich.
I'll just wrap up quick. So perhaps just one other ecological bit. Where the stream crosses Gazzola, there's really not a culvert there any longer. It's totally clogged up with sediments. This is Gazzola Drive right here. We'd be looking to put an open box culvert underneath the road where the stream could flow kind of unimpeded under the road. Also, there'd be kind of a dry bench on one side to allow amphibians and reptiles and small mammals to pass under the road without having to risk roadkill. That's the, y'all know where. You can ask me questions afterwards and give you my card if you have further questions. But just in the interest of time, I didn't even get a chance to talk about stormwater. We're looking to provide stormwater improvements for both Gazzola Drive and Montauk Highway. And ultimately, this plan would create 2,000 linear feet of new groundwater stream, 5.5 acres of forested wetlands, remove 20,000 cubic yards of organic sediments and Phragmites rhizomes, create 10 acres of oak forest, provide a 1.25 miles of nature trail, enhance 12 acres of degraded forest that might have scattered woody invasives or woody vines, remove the 58,000 square feet of dilapidated buildings, and then treat or manage stormwater from 50 acres of the watershed.
How many private homes can we put up in there?
I don't know what the zoning is.
Where's the economic
I just
development?
did a quick pass.
It's
It's a
parkland.
farm.
It's parkland.
Oh, wait, right to farm, sorry.
Agriculture.
You did a quick pass on
Oh,
it.
no.
It looked like about 20 odd.
Yeah.
Catch basins on Gazzola. Are you afraid of that runoff? I would think let it come in.
The
This place is its own.
Yeah,
catch
we want to
basin.
have
I would-
Well-
what's the money there? I would put that money. No, I
Well,
would put that money on site in
we want this stream to be as driven by groundwater as possible, with as little stormwater pulses as possible. So we'd like to get, well, not that this is a hugely developed area, but we don't want to get those stormwater pulses.
Okay.
We'd like to get into the ground. There'll have to be some type of overflow to the floodplain rather than directly into the creek. So that's the project in a nutshell. We told you we're going to, at the end, we want to be shovel ready with construction plans and permits and all that. The end date, we're looking to be done by June 2015. As DeWitt mentioned, we're doing the circuit right now of yourselves and other regulatory agencies and stakeholders. We hope that Planning and Parks will give us the go-ahead to proceed with construction drawings at the end of June, so that we can develop have final construction plans done by the end of 2014. We'll start SECRA process and obtaining environmental permits as soon as possible within that scope, within that time frame. We're also charged with developing a pre- and post-project monitoring plan that to help us evaluate the success of the project, and then be all done by, again, June of 2015, a few months in front of the contract end date in September of 2015.
Who's going to have the primary responsibility for preparing the plan? Your firm or?
H2M are going to be certifying the documents because
That's a really tight schedule.
Yeah.
I don't mind tight schedules, but
Do you have promises from DEC in there?
Promises? Do they issue promises?
I mean, it could be, 2020 by the time you get done with that shop.
They were very supportive in our initial meeting.
The only thing I would try to suggest is that the monitoring, you say, a couple of years of monitoring maybe to see if it worked. In fact, these things, you don't judge them until 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
So I hope you can present the shovel-ready thing, steel comes out, dirt moves, and then it's, oh, no, it's not over. You got 5 years of active, it's not yellow steel, but it's...
I know, I think there's, we hope to have phases of the monitoring where something, we have to have a monitoring where we can tell, say to the contractor, oh yeah, you did your job correctly, check. So after 2 years, the site's not overrun with invasives, your plants have survived. But then we are envisioning more of a longer term monitoring.
We gotta get that money too, because that's what's really gonna get us.
But some of these things, with the brook trout, if we can think of proxies like stream temperature that we can very easily collect data on and
wrap it up. People can ask questions if you want to stay, but can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Second. Okay, those in favor? Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.